Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 916 in the news. And it's good to see you all once again as Belarus is once again aggressing towards Ukraine. And also, we've seen some massive attacks, including a drone hitting Poland, of all things. So it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and the major developments that we have seen so far. As we've gotten breaking news and an actual, very interesting OPSEC violation of some somewhat sensitive pictures that are showing the Belarusian armed forces that are building up along the border, and we have been able to confirm at least the existence of two entire combined arms brigades that are currently within the area in between Gomel and Chernobyl at this moment. Vital information and intelligence for us to have on this stream, and once again showing us that this invasion threat may actually be a serious one due to the size of the armed forces that are involved in the Gomel area. We've also been able to get breaking news that as of 36 hours ago, for the first time in the history of the war, a Russian drone ended up landing and exploding 17 miles inside of Poland. The first ever time throughout the entirety of the war that a Russian munition has exploded on the territory of Poland literally since day one. This is a fairly major ordeal, but nevertheless, we are still trying to get a pretty decent bearing on what Poland and the rest of the NATO alliance will be doing in response to this as time goes on. Not only that, we've been able to get major news from deep inside of Russia near Omsk, as a major oil refinery within the city was stricken and began to pretty much go up in complete blaze. From what we understand, half of the refinery has now been shut down at this point. Once again, another death knell to the Russian oil industry and making sure that Russia has a domestic supply of usable fuels that will keep their war effort in their nation running and alive throughout the remainder of the conflict. We have also been able to see, speaking of a death knell to the Russian oil industry, or more so oil storage and reserves, the fire at Pokrovsk is finally starting to die down about 9 days after the fire began. We can still see that fires are going on in the area, but it does seem as though this chapter of pretty much the southern Don region burning in blazes is finally coming to an end. We also got some pretty big news as well, that the largest ever attack by the Russian Federation in drone and missile form was conducted against Ukraine approximately 36 hours ago. The air war that was raged over the skies of Ukraine was one of the largest ever seen. The air defense report was the largest that we had ever seen in the number of confirmed shootdowns, and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense did confirm that for the first time ever, F-16s were involved in defensive operations over the skies of Ukraine, and according to the initial reports, those F-16s did shoot down a large number of incoming missiles and drones over the course of that night. Once again, showing that the F-16s are a vital air defense system for the Ukrainian armed forces, although we are still seeing that the F-16s are far underutilized compared to what we were originally assuming. Not only that, the Ukrainian Kursk offensive is still going full swing, and a massive amount of damage is still being inflicted to Russian pontoon bridges that are being set up and immediately destroyed that are attempting to cross the river Reka-Sem. We have also been able to see that Ukrainian forces have continued to capture some Russian equipment and also take some Russian prisoners, but at this moment it does seem as though the Ukrainians may be consolidating their lines or attempting to try and figure out how to set up defensive positions to dig in, prepare for the Rasputitsa that is soon to come. We also got a lot of news from really the entire front in the Donbass, from the area around Kharkiv and all the way down into Pokrovsk, but this is just a small part of the news we have tonight. I'm sure many of y'all can tell by all of the massive bullet points that I'm hitting off here that I had to try and memorize before the show. We have a lot of news to cover, and these are just the big ticket points. We're not even talking about the smaller little bits of news that have happened today, so we have a lot to cover, an unbelievable amount. And moving into our first and probably biggest bit of news, we are going to be continuing the story that we were talking about on Saturday, well actually Sunday specifically, where we heard that the Belarusian armed forces were beginning to build up in mass along the Ukrainian border near to the region of Gomel, and were possibly going to start threatening the city of Chernihiv and Kyiv with some sort of an attempt at a lightning attack, a blitzkrieg of a sort by the Belarusian armed forces, as they would try and divert Ukrainian forces from other vital areas of the front line, such as the Kursk area, Pokrovsk, or the area around Chasiv Yar. This statement was taken as largely hearsay by some who wanted to make it sound like this channel was blowing things out of proportion. Oh, the enforcers, they just never know what they were talking about, was kind of the general ebb and flow that was being given about this, although we were getting official statements from Dmytro Kulba's office, who is the foreign minister of Ukraine. Some people seem to discount the fact that official government statements are regarded as news on this channel. Then, because of that, we had to make sure to keep a very eagle eye out for any kind of news and developments in picture and video evidence that would confirm the growing number of forces that are inside of the Gomel region in in southern Belarus and near the northern Ukrainian border. And we got that information just today. We were able to see a couple of pictures that came out from the Belarusian armed forces, apparently taken by some of the conscripts involved, and they leaked these out onto the internet somewhere. We understand that this was not authorized by the Belarusian Ministry of Defense due to the poor quality of the pictures, and so we are assuming that this is an OPSEC leak or an OPSEC violation by the Belarusians. But this is giving us a more clear picture of what is involved currently within this area. And interestingly enough, it is a large amount of armor. And there's something very important to be talking about with the larger amounts of armor that we're seeing present in this picture. We can see right here that some Belarusian crew members, probably a part of the Belarusian railroad division, which is their version of logistical support, much like the Russians use the railroads heavily as well. We can see that they've hauled in a large number of T-72As or T-72ABs that have been modified a little bit with Contact 1 ERA, and they're apparently starting to offload them in this area near to the Ukrainian border. We also got to see in another clip an offensive marking that is starting to pop up on a large amount of vehicles. And we also saw this on the tanks previously as well, which this does give us a pretty decent indication, at least on a one-off glance, that the Belarusians may actually be working on furthering an actual offensive plan and executing it in northern Ukraine. Offensive markings like these are very rarely given to units that are not going to be involved in an offensive really soon, and the reason why these are issued in advance is because the conscripts have to be familiarized with the kind of offensive marking that they will be using. Much like we saw with the Ukrainians that were heading into Kursk, we did see about a day before the invasion began that some Ukrainian vehicles were spotted in that area with a new kind of a marking on them, the triangle. And on our channel, we said that that meant one of two things. Either the Ukrainians were trying to create a ruse, making the Russians believe that there was a larger offensive force in this area, although there wasn't, by giving out a new offensive marking. Or the other option, the latter, was that this was actually a beginning of an invasion force, and we were seeing the very forward elements of that invasion force begin to engage the border elements near the area of Suja. It ended up being the latter. And going off of that, and really going off of the fact that the entire time in the war, we've ever seen a new offensive marking, there's always been a major offensive to follow, that fact has never failed us, we can assume that the Belarusians may actually be working on some sort of an offensive objective. This also appears to be...
Also, just a side note as well, what do you think the B stands for? Does it stand for Belarus, or could it stand for, another thing?
Beaches, it could stand.
I was gonna say if I was gonna hold back.
It could stand for really anything. Like the Z doesn't really stand for anything. It's just a letter that the Russians picked to mark all offensive fronts with at the beginning of the conflict, or at least the northern offensive. The B could just be anything. It's probably just the easiest letter for them to pick. Once again, it's another letter from the Latin alphabet. I believe that the B also exists. It does exist in the Cyrillic alphabet. I had to think about that for a second. But it's probably just a random marking that they ended up picking. But nevertheless, it does fall within kind of like the Slavic sort of a mindset, Matthew. You know, like Rush B. You know, like in the video games where they always go Rush B blade. They picked the B, and apparently the B point must be Kiev, I'm assuming. But still, interestingly enough, this is a fuel truck as well, once again showing that there is logistical support in this area. It's not an unsupported element, at least logistically. We can also see this picture as well. Now, we know that this has to be some sort of an OPSEC leak, because this looks like it was taken on some sort of an early 2000s disposable camera. I don't know what is up with the quality of this picture, and also the weird haze that's on it. Some people are going to say that's the exhaust of the vehicles. Maybe so, but it looks like there's some sort of a weird, like, lens on this thing, or an odd filter that was applied. But nevertheless, we can see the B marking on the lead vehicle, and the lead vehicle is actually pretty unique. It's a 2S6 Tunguska, which is one of the more advanced tracked self-propelled anti-aircraft guns that the Soviet Union ever developed, and the Ukrainians and the Belarusians do have a limited number of these things. From what we understand, the Belarusians moving one of these into this area would most likely be also showing that they are going to be conducting an offensive, as they are putting some of their best equipment up front first. Another interesting...
Also, one other thing I noticed in this photo, you mentioned how it looks like it's taken with like a disposable camera. Do you think maybe they could have made these photos look like that intentionally to make it look like maybe it was a unintentional OPSEC leak to sort of like throw the Ukrainians off a little bit?
Maybe so, but I'm doubting it a little bit, because usually any pictures that come out like these throughout the war, we've never had reason to doubt them. And on top of that, if they, like, it doesn't matter whether they made this look like an OPSEC leak or not. I'm sure the Ukrainians already have satellite footage and information that has been relayed to them by the United States through the Maxar satellites that is showing them the buildup already. So for us, on our end, it's confirming that they're there. The Ukrainians already know that these Belarusian forces are there, because they already made statements about this on Sunday, and apparently they did get enough proof at that point, either through satellite evidence or their own recon, to know that there was a large element of Belarusian forces beginning to build up in this area. So I would doubt that this is some sort of a feint at an OPSEC leak, because from what we already understand, the Ukrainians have already had all of their OPSEC, at least, well, the OPSEC of the Belarusians have been violated already, because the Ukrainians have already made comments about the buildup of their forces.
Interesting. So it could be legit. I just have doubts about it, because the Belarusians love to like do the same thing that Russia does and put on like psyops and try to mislead people and stuff like that. I just have fears that maybe this is intentionally leaked to concern Ukraine, maybe cause them to pull like troops out of Kursk or something, probably prematurely. So I don't know. The photos though do look like they're taken maybe without permission, but it's hard to tell.
Maybe so. Another interesting thing that I want to point out about the Tunguska before we get to the rest of the vehicles in this column is something that really stuck out to me as soon as I saw the picture. This Tunguska is missing its surface-to-air missiles, which is a fairly common compliment on a Tunguska. While a Tunguska is technically labeled a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, suggesting that the 4 autocannons it has on board is its primary armament, the Tunguska also packs a very significant punch with the surface-to-air missiles that it carries. I forgot the exact name of these, however, so do not count on me to tell you all the names of those missiles. Let me actually go see the name of them, because I believe they're the same ones mounted onto the Pantsir. So here we go. It is the 9M311, and I do believe that those are also used on the Pantsir as well. But I'm not exact. Yeah, actually, let's see. Let's see here. The missile. So surprise. So apparently the KS-100, well, the KS-1000 is some sort of a different variant of this missile used on the Pantsir. Very similar missiles, but nevertheless, this is something that was markedly not visible or not seen on this Tunguska, maybe suggesting that the Belarusians do not have enough missiles to use this thing in its full capacity, and it's just going to be used very similarly to some sort of a Gepard-like system, which only relies on the guns. Behind this Tunguska, we also saw a large amount of interesting vehicles as well. We saw a command MTLB right back here, showing that this may be the head of a column for the specific unit that's in this area, and then we saw a large amount of Akitsias, which are 2 S3s, behind the command vehicle moving through this field. This may be suggesting that this is some sort of an artillery, and some sort of an artillery battalion or an artillery company that we're seeing right here. And for some reason, interestingly enough, they attached the anti-air artillery to the actual artillery. I don't know why they did that. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's not really attached, or just all moving through the same area, but still an interesting thing to note. But once again, this picture is indicating that not only do they have a decent amount of armor, a requirement for an offensive, not only do they have a decent amount of logistics, which will sustain an offensive, they have a large amount of artillery. And artillery and tanks combined together, at least in Soviet doctrinal warfare, is a key element. It is a piece of the recipe, both of them are, to be able to conduct a successful offensive. So as far as we can tell, they have a decent amount of offensive equipment that has been moved into this area. And then in the last picture, we can once again see them preparing to offload a large amount of T-72. I call them ABs because usually the T-72Bs have side skirts that have Contact 1 ERA mounted onto them as well. These do not have the side skirts, but they do have the normal T-72B armor layout on the rest of the upper hull and also the turret as well. So we're going to be calling these T-72ABs for the moment until we see an actual legitimate T-72B within the area. But this is still giving us an idea out of all of these pictures that we are pretty certain this looks like it may end up being an actual offensive, especially because of the offensive markings and the kind of equipment and vehicles that the Belarusians have moved into this area. And this has led a lot of people...
Have we been able to get like a geolocation of this either? Because I can tell from the photo, it looks like it's obviously Belarusian tanks. It looks like, I think it's pretty clear, but it's really hard to tell like exactly where this is. So do we know for certain where it is, or like even when the photo was taken, even like the date?
I wasn't really able to geolocate these well. We were told that this was fairly recent, but we weren't able to geolocate the exact area. We were told that this was also around the Gomel area, which would seem to line up a little bit, but I haven't been able to geolocate this exact area here because there's not a lot of landmarks really to work off of. The best we have are these telephone poles and telegram or telephone poles, either one, but usually telegram and telephone poles exist near every single railroad, so it's really hard to tell if this is a special location or not. But it is making a lot of people beg the question, though, is this some sort of a Belarusian psyop? Because the Ukrainians seem to be very concerned about this. Even today, we are continuing to hear a high amount of concern from the Ukrainian government about this buildup of Belarusian forces, because supposedly today, another 2 brigades moved in, which is about an additional 6,000 to 9,000 troops that are now a part of this buildup on the northern border. It's quite a large amount of armed forces. And a lot of people are talking about whether this is a psyop, whether it's not a psyop, whether the Ukrainian government should really be concerned about it or what. And it seems like a lot of people have been weighing in on what their opinion is at the moment about this movement by the Belarusians. And Matthew, what are people saying about it? Do they think that this is a real McCoy, like this is an actual upcoming offensive? And what are you thinking about as well? Do you think it's real or not so much?
So it looks like about 50% of the audience said yes, it's a large-scale psyop by Belarus to mislead the Ukrainian army, while 30% said no, it's real troop movements, and 12% said, I really need some more intel before I can make up my mind. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Yesterday, from the sounds of it, also the statements coming out of Ukraine that Belarus should withdraw immediately from the border, clearly something is happening. But the issue is, whether or not these photos that are coming out and being spread all across the internet, are these actual leaked photos, or are they actually like authorized by the Belarusian military? I would say that the photos, to me, appear to be part of a psyop. That's not to discount the fact that Belarus is indeed moving equipment down to the border, but I think they're intentionally leaking these out and letting people do this to cause fear in the Ukrainians. So I'm with the 50%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm kind of unsure and undecided. I'd actually have to go with the 8%, because it'd be easy to say that this is a Belarusian psyop, but the reality is that a lot of people believed, and a lot of people ended up being wrong on this, that the Ukrainian, we can't even call it the Ukrainian because no one even knew at the time. The little skirmish that happened around Suja just a day before the major offensive began into Ukraine, a lot of people discounted that as a psyop as well. Everyone on every side discounted that as a psyop. They said it was either the Free Russian Army, once again getting back to doing what they do, or the alternative is that it was the Ukrainians just messing around with the Russians and nothing big was going to come of that. And then the next day, the Ukrainians were in Suja and rapidly advancing in all directions deeper into the Kursk Oblast. So a lot of people would have initially thought this is some sort of a ruse, some sort of a psyop, 100%. Can't be real, it's not real, it will never be real, and then it ended up being real. But at the same time, this could very easily be some sort of a ruse by the Belarusians. There's nothing really to say that they actually have the ability or the means to conduct an offensive, not because of a lack of equipment. They may actually have a decent amount of equipment to work with even still after giving a decent amount to the Russians. The problem is that they may not have the kind of commitment or morale within their armed forces to be able to carry through an offensive. Because we've heard time and time again through this conflict that Lukashenko, or Lukashenko, whatever you want to call him, has had very low support from the military and the commanders within the Belarusian armed forces, and they have pretty much, according to what we've heard, and this is nothing more than rumors, have threatened Lukashenko with a coup d'etat to overthrow him and install a new leader if war in Ukraine was ever declared by Belarus. And so, from what we understand based off of prior stories and information, we would assume that there's probably not a lot of support for a conflict against Ukraine from Belarus. But once again, this armed forces movement is making it seem that maybe something has changed, or it's maybe just wanting people to believe something has changed. So I would have to say that, in my opinion, I'm going to say that I'm not so sure. And also another thing that's leading me to be very unsure about the reality of this, whether it's a psyop or not, is that the Ukrainians are taking this very seriously. And that plays a major factor in my mind on how big of an event, how serious this is. Because the Ukrainians, if they were seeing this and they actually knew there was nothing behind it, they probably wouldn't make that much of a big deal about it. But not only did they make a big deal about it, they actually pretty much threatened the Belarusians that if they invade Ukraine, they're going to start wiping out the Belarusian army as quickly as they possibly can. And you wouldn't make a statement like that. You wouldn't make a statement telling them withdraw your forces, and then you wouldn't also add on, if you invade us, we'll kill you. You usually wouldn't make those kinds of statements if you thought there was nothing going on. And we have to remember that there isn't really, this could really go either way. This could be a ruse or this could be the real deal. From what we know, from what the Ukrainians have said, and also the pictures that we have today, there is a pretty sizable element of the Belarusian army in the southern area. It's not myth. The Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government have confirmed that there is a buildup in this area. So we don't really have a lot of reason to discredit the pictures. They're probably accurate.
It just seems like with the pictures though, like what, for example, like they went through all the effort to paint the B on the tanks before they even actually got to the location they were going to be like offloaded at. To me, that's kind of odd. It seems like if you were going to invade, it seems like you'd put the tanks where they're supposed to go on the border first, and then try to put the markings on there. Because the way the pictures were taken, were clearly trying to show off the B marking, the offensive marking, which would obviously strike fear in the Ukrainians. I think that might be the point.
Well, I mean, you would think that, but you have to remember that people aren't really good at identifying things, and you kind of have to get everyone familiarized with what's what before they move in. Like, for example, in World War II, this is actually a really good example. The United States introduced a new tank destroyer in the middle of World War II that was called the M18 Hellcat. And the M18 Hellcat is not a Dodge Hellcat, it's actually really different looking. And let me show y'all a picture of this right here. This is an M18, and this was fairly radical for US tank design at the time. It looked really different. And one thing that's really interesting and really important to note about the Hellcat is that it looks a little German, at least from a really, really far distance. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be saying right now, this looks nothing German at all, and the big white star is clearly indicated as an American tank, but the US Army, and really everyone, was really concerned that this thing would end up getting shot. And shot it did, and not by the Germans. It actually ended up getting shot at by Americans here and there throughout the war, at least the later end. And so what the United States ended up having to do is that they would put Hellcats at major crossroads where U.S. forces were moving by, like entire brigades on the march to the front, and they would have signs up on the side of these M18s saying, "This is an American tank destroyer. Do not shoot at me. Notice the red muzzle brake." And they started to paint the muzzle brakes on the M18s red, so that way they could be identified as American tank destroyers and not German tank destroyers. And they had to do this a lot before any of these really saw any major action, because as soon as they showed up, they ended up getting shot at by the Americans before they even got shot at by the Germans, because misidentification and friendly fire is a really, really major ordeal if you don't communicate and really relay information correctly about who's who and where and who's good and who's bad and who do you shoot at and who do you not shoot at. And that's something that everyone has done so far in this war as well. Every single time an offensive is about to begin, like the Kharkiv offensive, we did see the diamond with the cross, the St. Andrew's cross, through the middle of it, and it was painted in white on all the vehicles before the offensive began. We saw pictures of that come out. We knew that at that point the Russians were probably starting to get this offensive marking into the minds of the troops and go, "This is our marking. This is our thing. Do not shoot at other vehicles with this marking on it because they're our people." And they were probably trying to hammer that home the entire time before that offensive started. And the Ukrainians did the same thing in Kursk with the white triangle. They said, "This is our marking. If you see these vehicles, they are friendly and they are a part of our campaign front. If you see any other marking on any other vehicle, even if it looks like our vehicle, that's not ours, shoot it and blow it up." And so time and time again, we've seen that they usually paint these things on well before an offensive even begins, because they're trying to get their own soldiers familiarized with who is a friend. If you see a B, that's good. If you do not see a B, that's not good. If you see a triangle, it's a good thing. If you don't, that's a bad thing. If you see a Z, that's a good thing. If you don't see a Z, that's a bad thing. And they've been doing that throughout the war, because identification of friendly units You cannot overstate that enough. If you do not get that down well in advance, you're going to suffer friendly fire. So I would say,
That makes sense. That makes sense. That seems like it's pretty possible after you explained it like that. It just seems like it's terrible for OPSEC if you're trying to keep it like on the down low that you're about to invade a foreign country. It seems like that would be pretty bad on that front, but I guess they got to make sure the troops know what they're doing first.
yeah, I mean, you have to make sure. In fact, probably one of the most famous versions of this, just to hammer this home even a little bit more, a lot of people know this one, and I'm going to show it to y'all. It's Trooping the Color, and a lot of people in Britain know exactly what I'm talking about. It's when the royal family has their birthday, they get all of the troops in the square behind the banquet house. Well, actually, it's not the banquet house. That's Whitehall Palace, and they troop the color. And what they're doing, it's an ancient principle in the armed forces in Britain and really throughout most countries in the world before modern identifiers came into being and battle standards weren't really used on the battlefield any longer. But the entire ceremony that they do here, they take the regimental colors of this specific regiment and they march it down this entire line of all of the companies of the regiment, showing those companies what their battle standard looks like for them to familiarize themselves with it. So if they see that battle standard, that is their guys. If they do not see that battle standard, that is the enemy, and you're to shoot at them. And this is probably one of the most famous versions of, or at least a tradition of identifying friendly units versus foe, is the trooping of the color.
That's very interesting. I mean, I actually I kind of knew that, but it's just interesting to see that the whole explanation of it. So I like that.
Yeah, so from what we know, this marking of the offensives, like we're seeing with Belarus with the B, it is showing that they may seriously be considering some sort of offensive. Could be a ruse, because of course putting through that kind of effort, it would lead one to believe they're probably going to knock on a full offensive really soon, and we're going to be in a bit of trouble in the war. Or it could just be that it is a ruse, and there's nothing behind it at all, rather than trying to get the Ukrainians freaked out and have them divert all of their strategic reserves into this area. So with that, I hope that does address that as best I can. That's why I'm within the unsure category, because much like this could easily be nothing, this could easily turn into a major offensive tomorrow. But moving on from that and out of Belarus, we did see something pretty shocking occur over last night as well, which may be leading us to believe a little bit further that the Belarusians really are seriously considering an offensive. Russia is on the back foot pretty badly. While they are winning in some small battles around the Pokrovsk front, in most other places they're getting pushed back or they're taking incredibly high losses to gain absolutely no ground. And it seems as though the Russians are trying to find a way to knock Ukraine out. And one of the best ways that the Russians have found, at least in their own minds, to target the Ukrainians and try and damage them heavily is by conducting incredibly large drone and missile attacks in huge waves, attempting to overrun Ukrainian air defenses and to destroy a large amount of vital infrastructure inside of Ukraine, particularly power plants, which seems to have been the majority target for the Russians throughout a large part of the last year. We have seen that overnight, the Russians fired some of the largest amounts of missiles and drones seen, and this was the air defense report come morning from the Ukrainian armed forces. It was insane. It was an absolute slaughter in the skies of Ukraine last night. 99 Shahed 136s were shot down, along with an additional 99 calibers, and let me see here. Let's see, Krylatu Raketu. I don't know what this one is. It's an X-22. Let me go pull that up really quickly. The X-22 missile, the KH-22. What the hell? I have never heard of this one before. So this was the missile that was fired. This is the one that was shot down. I've never seen this used in the war before. That's why I don't even know what this thing is. So that's new. But then they also shot down an additional Iskander-M, which is a fairly large missile. We don't see a lot of those being used anymore. And interestingly enough, they also shot down a Kinzhal as well. One of the hypersonic missiles, the ones that are supposed to be impervious to ground fire, it ended up being shot down. So this was the largest air raid we've ever seen on Ukraine. It was also the most successful interception that we've ever seen over Ukraine as well, as we have never seen more than 200 air targets get shot down in a single night. So this was a pretty impressive thing, all things considered. But some of these missiles did make it through and did end up hitting their targets. One of them did end up hitting the Kyiv hydroelectric power plant in the northern area of the city, and we were able to see video footage confirming that the dam had been damaged. From what we understand, the damage is superficial. It is, once again, much like we saw down at the area around Zaporizhia, at the Dnipropetrovsk hydroelectric power plant, this apparently hit the area where the cranes moved to be able to lift the floodgates. It didn't actually cause serious structural damage to the dam itself.
And this is recent, this video right here?
Yeah, this is just from 36 hours ago.
That's crazy. It looks almost identical to the same dam attack we saw a while back. Like, I looked up and I was thinking, this looks like what happened a while ago, like, 6 months to a year ago when they hit the dam last time.
Yeah, I mean, it really does look pretty similar. And we can see after the fire subsided, they're showing off the damage that was caused to the dam. Once again, it's knocking out the gantry that the cranes move on, but beyond that, it wasn't really a serious hit. We also got to see in another clip that apparently more missiles were vectored into this area, but the Ukrainians were able to successfully shoot some of them down, and we were able to see one of them apparently suffering some sort of a computer destruction on board or something along those lines, ended up slamming down into the Sea of Kyiv, close to the dam, but not directly on it. And here's the clip. Here comes the missile. Right up there. Slamming right into the sea. We see them getting back up and watching the plume after the missile exploded inside of the lake. But still, once again showing that air defense was a pretty decent bit successful, and we also got to see something really interesting as well. A aircraft, a fighter jet as it was described, destroyed a missile somewhere over Ukraine. We're assuming that this is in the northern area, so here's the clip. We're able to hear the jet. We see it right up there, actually. We see it fire a missile right there. And hit an air target, destroying it. Now, we can't confirm this for sure. I put this down on the description of this video, but some people have rumored that this was actually a video of an F-16 using an AIM-9L, most likely, to shoot down this incoming air target. We can't confirm that for sure, because it's really, really hard to see the aircraft. Let me show it to y'all again. It's literally just a dot, so we can't really tell for certain whether it was an F-16, but we did get confirmation that during that attack, a large amount of the F-16s in Ukraine were flying and were shooting down incoming air targets, probably helping the Ukrainians to bump up their interception rates a great deal down there on the ground. Meanwhile, while this massive air attack was going on, we then heard some pretty shocking news that really took the world by storm yesterday, at least on this channel, as the video we put out about it ended up getting about 640,000 views. A lot of people were shocked about this, and so I'm going to give a little bit of some additional information while we're talking about this here, because I saw a lot of people apparently getting things wrong and trying to correct me in the chat, in the comments, about some things that were not correct. Well, at least their assumptions were not correct. Near to the town of Tigris, in 16 to 17 miles inside of Poland, we heard reports from the Polish Ministry of Defense, and I want to make this very clear. This isn't just, like one of those stupid Twitter things where they put breaking and then they put like the little cop siren thing next to the word, and then they say something and then they don't back it up, like there's no source or anything. This came directly from the Polish Ministry of Defense, and we were able to hear that a Russian drone exploded in the area around Tigewis on August 26th, which was yesterday. According to the direct statement we have from Nexta, and also paraphrasing the statement from the Polish Ministry of Defense, during their massive Russian attack on Ukraine, which took place on the morning of August 26th, a yet unidentified object entered Polish airspace and apparently landed on Polish territory. This was stated by the operational command of the Polish army. It is reported that it was not a missile, meaning that this was a drone. The Ukrainians do not use drones in air defense, and this means only one thing. This was a Russian drone that it ended up apparently losing control or deliberately flying about 17 miles into Poland and exploding around the village. The head of the operational command, General Klisch, said that apparently it was an unmanned aerial vehicle, much like we were saying right there. Presumably, it fell near the border town of Tigewis, and a search for the object is underway. We were able to have an additional source for that as well, giving us further confirmation that they have sent out a search team to look for the wreckage of the drone where it exploded. We have not gotten word back yet from what I was able to find from the Polish government speaking about their findings of the debris and what kind of a drone it was. We are assuming that it was most likely a Shahed 136, as those are the only kinds of FPV or really kamikaze drones that are used by the Russians at this point. But still, once again, this is the first time ever that a Russian ordnance has exploded inside of Poland. Now, a lot of people were trying to correct me yesterday, and apparently a lot of people wanted to feel smart, not to say this in a rude way, wanted to feel smart but weren't really so, because a lot of people were saying, actually, you're wrong, Enforcer. This isn't the first time that a Russian explosion happened in Poland, you idiot. There was one that happened a while ago that killed 2 Polish farmers. Or they would say something like, actually, a Ukrainian missile exploded in Poland and killed 2 farmers. This is the first time ever that a Russian bomb has exploded in Poland, period. We've never seen one so far. The other thing that happened a while ago is that near the area of Lviv, an S-300 missile ended up veering off course after it failed to intercept an incoming air target, and then it flew without self-destructing over the border about a mile or 2 into Poland and ended up exploding near a small farm, killing 2 people. There was no incident and no major situation made out of it because Poland is supportive of Ukraine in the current war effort, and so that was largely brushed under the rug and swept aside because it wasn't that big of a deal and it was largely an accident. This, however, is a very different situation, and it's never, I have to make this very clear, it has never happened in the war. There has never been a drone launched by Russia that has flown into Poland and has ended up exploding in Poland. There have been some missiles that have just skirted the border and ended up violating Polish airspace. There was also a time where the Belarusians flew a helicopter over into Poland for a while and circled a village, but there has never been an incident where anything has exploded fired by the Russians in Poland. So this is brand new. We have never seen anything like this before, and it is a pretty major ordeal, all things considered. A lot of people are starting to talk heavily about this. We had a lot of people talking about this yesterday on the video that was made. Loads of people were saying that Article 5 should be invoked. A lot of people were saying that Poland is going to kill the Russians. A lot of people were saying NATO is weak and they're going to do nothing. There's been a lot of comments thrown around about what the West should do in response to this. I have a feeling that the response is going to be very similar to the Romanian incidents, where we see that absolutely nothing happens. Something exploded onto NATO territory. Oh well, no one was hurt. Guess it's no big deal. That's probably going to be the response, but nevertheless, a lot of people have been weighing in on what should the Polish do, or what should happen really overall, considering that a Russian drone exploded 17 miles inside of Poland. That is a pretty long-range distance. I mean, that's pretty far in compared to everything else we've seen. Like in Romania, for example, the deepest that a drone has ever exploded in Romania is about 1 kilometer or 2 inside of Romania, just on the other side of the Danube. We have never seen one explode 17 miles inside of the borders of a NATO country, so this is fairly new really on all levels. And a lot of people have been sharing their thoughts about this. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about as well? Do you think that they should start shooting down these drones, or assist Ukraine in their defense, or overlook it? What should they do, and what are people thinking that they should do?
All right, so on this poll right here, about 70% of the audience said Poland should shoot down the drones, while 23% said Poland should assist Ukrainian defense over their airspace, and 4% said Poland should just overlook it. And I would say that they should definitely not overlook it because they've been overlooking stuff that not just Poland really. NATO as a whole has been overlooking a lot of stuff of drones and other munitions going into our airspace and really not doing much about it. So I would say the obvious first step is to shoot down the drones that come into their airspace, and we should also maybe consider helping Ukraine out as well to prevent the drones from coming toward NATO at all. So I'm actually with the 23%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, Poland should shoot down the incoming drones and missiles immediately. I believe that there may even be a good argument to have some sort of an exclusionary zone made about 5 miles into Ukraine, where if anything enters that area, it's going to be fired on by Polish air defense. The reason being is that helping out Ukraine with their defense would probably start to draw Poland and eventually NATO into a full-blown conventional war, which is something that, at least on a strategic end, we're still trying to avoid for some reason. But beyond that, we are still trying to avoid it, and for that reason, we don't want to possibly create a situation where we draw ourselves into a war. However, the defense of national sovereignty of the airspace and borders of NATO countries is still a very important task, and one that is largely sacred to the existence of any nation, is to exert control over its lands and skies within its territory of control. For this reason, I would say that the Polish should start to set up an incredibly large amount of air defense units within the area of the Polish-Ukrainian border, as well as the Polish-Belarusian border, and maybe even the Russian-Polish border near Kaliningrad, although that seems to be more of a secondary objective to me. And if anything crosses that border into Polish airspace, it will be fired on. Period. There will be absolutely no hesitation. There will be no questioning. There will be no requests if it's a manned aircraft for it to divert. If it enters Polish airspace, it will be shot down, and then the pieces will be sorted out later. That would be my general principle, because by continuously showing from NATO that Poland and Belarus can both have Russian drones land on their territory and explode, possibly endangering or actually threatening the lives of their citizenry, which NATO has assured will be defended and protected against from external powers like Russia that wish the Western world harm. The fact that they are able to explode on those territories and nothing happens is absolutely insane to me. It's a very poor posture, in my opinion. It looks incredibly weak. I mean, sure, maybe one time a Russian drone can land in Romania and explode, but there should have only been a single one time. There should have never been a second time. I believe we're on about the 20th time at this point a drone has exploded in Romania, and now we're on to the first time that a drone has exploded in Poland. Before long, really,
Isn't it kind of weird? Isn't it kind of weird how literally Poland just got done talking about maybe shooting down drones over Ukraine's airspace a while back? They were like batting that idea around. And now this time, Poland was tracking that drone all the way into their territory, all the 25 kilometers into their territory. They were watching the thing on radar, and they never shot it down. Like, I just don't understand the logic behind that.
I really don't either, to be entirely honest. I would have to say that, in my opinion, 100%, if I was the one at the helm of NATO, which means that I would be the president of the United States, I would be giving authorization to Poland and Romania to fire on any drones that even appear, or any missiles for that matter, any airborne objects that appear to be flying from inside of Ukraine or outside of their territory and into their nation without authorization from the eastern direction of Europe should be fired upon immediately, and we will back them up 100% regardless of the consequences that come. If the Russians do not want their drones and missiles shot down, they simply just don't have to fly them into NATO airspace. It's a very easy kind of a mathematical equation. They do not fly in our airspace, stuff doesn't get shot down. Missiles and drones fly into Polish and Romanian airspace, they get shot down. Very simple. If they didn't want them to get shot down, don't fly over our airspace. It's a very, very simple thing. It's a very simple thing to understand. The Russians don't really get the whole sovereignty of borders thing until it's their borders, but I feel like they should start to relearn this concept, even if it means that we end up having to take a limited armed action against the Russians if necessary. And so with that,
You know, I think, like really speculating on it and thinking why Poland would not shoot down stuff coming into their airspace. But that's pretty obvious. That's like self-defense if they were to shoot that down. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Poland might be more scared of the U.S. response than the Russian response to it, because what are the Russians going to do if Poland shoots down a rogue drone going through Polish airspace? I doubt the Russians are going to do anything. They're just going to be like, oh, like it was us off course and please forgive us or something like that. That's probably what they would say, trying to like tamp it down a little bit, because Russia really doesn't want to start a direct fight with NATO right now, or they would already attack NATO. That's not their current stance. So I think maybe Poland's worried about what the U.S. is going to threaten if we were to, quote unquote, escalate by shooting down a weapon over our own airspace, which is honestly kind of weak if that's the case.
Also, one second, Matthew, don't ban this person, but someone said, these effing Yanks seem not to care about nuclear weapons being detonated in Europe. I support Ukraine, but NATO directly intervened. So NATO directly intervening, according to you, if I'm understanding correctly, is us shooting down Russian bombs that are flying into NATO airspace and exploding inside of NATO countries. That's what you say is directly interfering? Now, I understand being a little apprehensive about any kind of armed action. Usually people are. But there is a point where we're starting to say, we're going to be so cowardly and cowardice that we're going to put our own people's lives at risk. The United States isn't just the United States. We are the Western world. Right now, the United States is the one that's largely calling the shots and telling Romania and Poland to not fire upon these incoming air targets and destroy them before they can cause any harm. Would you be saying the same thing if that drone ended up blowing up inside of the town of Tishuis and ended up killing a family of 4 while they were sleeping? Would that be the same kind of premise that we would have right there? Is the Russians getting to do whatever they want worth that Polish family of 4? Like, where in the world do we draw the line at this point if we're going to be that scared of confrontation, that scared of standing up for ourselves and protecting our own people? If we're not willing to stand up and defend our people from bombs that are flying into our airspace, into our lands, where in the world does it end from there? What can the Russians do? What in the world will we stop them at? Because we're not willing to defend our own people. Because while the Polish people are not Americans, they are our people. They are a part of our common defense alliance. If we're not willing to protect them, then who are we willing to protect at all? We must not be willing to protect anyone. Because at that point, we're telling the Russians, you can openly kill any of our citizens that you want in smaller batches, and they're so insignificant, we don't even care. That's largely the message that we would be giving them at that point. I would say, to be honest, being scared of defending one's own sovereignty by shooting down Russian drones and missiles that have flown into NATO airspace and are over our skies, that to me sounds like cowardice. There's no other way to put it, because it's Poland's land, it's Poland's skies. If they don't want Russian bombs flying through their skies, they have all the rights they want to shoot those missiles and drones down. There shouldn't be anyone in the background telling them they can't. That's largely why we believe that they're not shooting them down, is because the United States is in the background, so scared for some reason of provoking the Russians, for no reason at all, really, rather than the fact that we provoked them, that we keep on telling everyone you can't shoot at these incoming drones and missiles. And that's why the Russians keep on pushing the envelope until they're going to kill someone. And then when they kill someone, where are we going to be at there? That's going to be a terrible spot to be in, because now we're having to make the decision while a whole bunch of people may have ended up getting killed. That's not a good stance to be in at all. We need to stop that before it happens, at least to me. And so,
do you think they've got maybe some sort of like, I know this is like something that may be unpopular, but the U.S. Defense Secretary and also the Russian Defense Secretary, they speak constantly. Like, they speak on the phone all the time. And that's not abnormal. I'm not saying there's like a conspiracy or anything right there with that. But I wonder if, in the spirit of de-escalation, that we're giving Russia some leeway and we're letting them know they have leeway. As long as they don't go too far, then we won't do anything. I wonder if that's being said behind the scenes to try to keep the peace. And honestly, that's not going to keep the peace. That's going to cause things to get even more out of control if that's actually what's happening. Because it seems like Russia knows they can go so far, but yet they stop at the same line every time. Like, they've been like lobbing drones and stuff into NATO countries for months. And it's happened in many different countries, and nobody's done anything about it. And it seems to be happening over and over again the exact same way. Like, Russia knows they can make themselves look good by doing that, but nothing's really going to happen because there's like an unofficial gentleman's agreement in the background. It kind of seems like that to me.
Yeah, it seems like that to me a little bit, but I would have to say that stance is going to have to change. because we're honestly, with this kind of a stance, just to be honest with y'all, we're putting a lot of people at risk around the entirety of the world that are a part of our sphere. A lot of people don't get this. America isn't just America. We are the center of the Western world. And we end up calling a lot of the shots and a lot of the actions that minor members of the Western sphere can do. Just like I was talking about with Poland and Romania, we call the shots down in the Middle East. And right now, in my opinion, we're putting a lot of Israelis at risk of getting killed. And we're not just talking about Jewish Israelis. We're talking about every single Israeli. Like, for example, the ones living in Majo Shams that ended up getting killed that were not Jewish. I believe they were Armani, if I'm correct. They ended up getting killed. And we keep on saying to everyone, oh, just don't do anything. Let's just pray that it all passes over. And that's a terrible idea. It's a horrific thing. Because right now, we'll get on into this in a little bit. Now we're hearing that apparently Iran is poised and ready to conduct an attack on Israel. Apparently, this mixed messaging we're getting, it's just them waffling on actually committing to their attack. And when that attack happens, this one, we are assuming that it may be so large and actually ends up overwhelming Israeli air defense, and we end up seeing either a large amount of people die or an entire ally of the Western world ends up getting crippled militarily for months, if not over a year or two. That's a major ordeal, and we keep on making this move over and over again to appease instead of to stand our own ground. We have a sphere that we're in charge of right now in this world. It is our responsibility as the United States to ensure the stability of our sphere. It's not a moral thing. It's really for our own benefit. Some people will look at it as it's a nice thing to do, and if you look at it that way, that's great. But there is another underlying reason, and that's that it actually benefits us. We make a lot of money trading with countries around the world, and a lot of those countries are within our sphere. And a lot of those countries make money dealing with us. Everyone ends up benefiting, everyone ends up prospering, and everyone has a pretty good life because of it. And if we end up wholesaling parts of the world away, like Eastern Europe and the Middle East, we are eventually going to end up with nothing left. Well, eventually, Europe will leave because they'll see that there's no reason in sticking around with America because America's got no one's back. And they'll end up creating their own sphere and end up kind of being the middleman in between the Chinese and us. And then we've lost everything at that point, and no one's making a great deal of money. No one's really living a good life. And now we've just switched the control from us to the Chinese eventually in the future in a couple of decades. Not a good move. And that's why we need to be a lot more supportive of allies in the area that are dealing with the situation. I'm not saying that America has to go around slamming the Russians or slamming the Iranians, but if the Israelis want to knock the Iranians around a little bit because they find it to be appropriate because they're in the area having to actually deal with the situation up front, or the Romanians and the Poles want to shoot down Russian drones and missiles flying over their airspace, we shouldn't condemn them and threaten them and tell them, if you don't sit there and just let them do whatever they want, we're going to do something to you instead as a repercussion. We should tell them, go all for it. If you want to shoot down the drones and missiles, by all means. If you want to conduct preemptive strikes against Iran, by all means. And we will back you up if any consequences come from it. That should be our answer. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. I can't hammer it home enough how we should be standing up to the axis of evil in the world instead of letting them continue to be evil and spread their evil even into our own borders. And so with that, I hope I hit the hammered that down as best I can. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into a little bit more news that we actually have tonight. And Matthew, I understand that we actually got a couple of questions here.
So we do have a couple of questions here, and moving into our first Super Chat segment, our first one is going to go to Bearcat, who put in a very generous $50 donation, and huge shout out to Bearcat for that support. They are a channel lurker, in their own words. They said, I'm still here, and just lurking these days, and best war news existed.
And thank you so much for the support, Bearcat, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, and I gotta thank you for being an American lacquer, because folks like you make up a large amount of our audience, the lurkers, because usually every night we have a couple of hundred people who engage in the live chat and they talk through most of it, but a lot of people, thousands of people, don't say a single word. They just watch the show. And to all of those lurkers out there, hello to you. I hope you're enjoying tonight's show. And I gotta thank you so much, Bearcat, for not being one of those lurkers tonight and letting us know that you're still here and around. And thank you so much once again for the support, Bearcat. It really means a lot and helps us to keep this channel running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling day in and day out. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our second super chat of the first segment goes to Point of Guinness, who's a channel legend, and puts in a $30 donation. And huge shout out to you, Point of Guinness, for that support. They said, funds to pimp out a lotta for the Pimp Marmot, Pimp Mobile, Pimp.
Hey, that's a pretty good one. And I got to thank you for the massive support, Point of Guinness. And you know something? We were talking about a lot of here and there every once in a while. We've kidded around about the concept of a lotta and getting some kind of a lotta, but the problem is that in America they're not cheap because they had to be imported, so they're actually pretty expensive for like the hunk of junk they are. But I think we should eventually spend some time in a question segment pimping out a lotta for the Pimp Marmot. I think that would be hilarious, and then put the Pimp Marmot in it. I think that'd be great. But still, thank you so much once again for that support and helping this channel to keep on running, Point of Guinness. Also, thank you for being one of our British viewers as well, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we say this a lot. Like, I always say helping the channel to keep on running, and we say this so much, and I feel like I need to explain a little bit about what I mean. Because we have a lot of new viewers here again tonight, much like many other nights. This channel does not run our streams with ads. Many of y'all will probably notice that even if you don't have YouTube Premium, you click right on the stream, and there's not a single ad that runs. And we don't have any sponsorships either. That's because the stream runs on an ad-free, sponsor-free premise. We'll never run an ad on the stream, and we'll never have a sponsor. The only way that we do this as a living, and actually, kind of get paid to do this as our full-time jobs, covering this every single day and working on this massively in the background, is from viewers like Point of Guinness and Bearcat supporting this channel through super chats and helping us to keep this thing running. If it was not for folks like them, we wouldn't be able to do this for a living, because we work on this thing about 60 to 70 hours a week. Which is a lot of time. That's a lot of time to be working on. So Matthew and me work about equal hours these days on this thing. And we're constantly trying to make sure to get the news out to y'all, make sure to pay attention to what's going on in the news. And if it wasn't for all of these folks, the super chatters who supported this channel every single night, we would not be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing alive. We wouldn't be able to do this as a job. And so we always give a massive amount of time and appreciation and a huge thanks to each one of them and call them out individually, even if it is just $1, or even if it's all the way up to $500, which is the cap for a super chat, because each one of those people makes it possible for us to do this as a job every single day, and makes it a reality for the 11,000 people who are on stream right now to be watching the news every single day. And so a big thanks to y'all once again. Every single person who super chatted tonight, a big shout out to Point of Guinness and Bearcat, because if it was not for all of y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running for so many people. And so with that, huge thanks to you once again, Point of Guinness. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so the last one of the first segment is going to go to Trister1, who's a channel legend. He put in a $50 donation, and huge shout out to you, Trister, for always supporting the channel. And he said, I'm a lurker. He said, any thoughts on the Akhmat? And we call them the TikTok Brigade. They got that Cybertruck. They're trying to go in, I guess you could say mainstream out there, but they're clowns. But thank you very much for the support.
And I got to say, thank you, Trista, for being an American lacquer. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, as far as the Akhmat goes, the Akhmat is pretty garbage. Like, if we had a tier rating, like from S tier to F tier for the Akhmat, I would put them in the F tier. They're actually one of the few units I would put down there. For the Russians, of course, that's a relative scale because something has to be S tier for the Russians. Although, in my opinion, I would say that nothing really is. But if I had to give a tier rating, Akhmat would be an F tier. It would be down at the very bottom. We've never seen them perform properly in combat. They always seem to have very low cohesion, very low morale, inadequate training. They are equipped well, at least in terms of armored cars, but we've never seen them really use anything more than an armored car, so they seem to be some kind of a motorized element, which isn't really that strong and really won't hold anything down all too well, and really aren't good for offensives either. Not only that, they conduct atrocities against the Ukrainians, they conduct atrocities against the Russians, they conduct atrocities against themselves. They are the living embodiment of a war crime, like the entire unit is. It may as well be the equivalent in the modern day of the Waffen-SS from Nazi Germany. I'm not a big fan of them at all. I think they were one of the worst units out there, and in my personal opinion, I think that after the war, the Ukrainians should probably hunt down and find every single Akhmat commander they can inside of Russia. Russia will probably survive by the end of this war either way, so it'll be pretty hard for the Ukrainians to extradite these people into Ukraine for justice. So if they can extradite them into Ukraine to face justice, I think the Ukrainians should send in the SBU or the GRU into Russia and find these commanders and make sure that they pay for the crimes that at least their underlings committed during the war in some form or another, if y'all get what I'm saying. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, Tristan One. I'm not a big fan of the Akhmat at all, and also I can't stand like the macho man thing they got going on. And at the same time, they're like the most cowardly, weak unit you've ever seen, like we've ever seen. Like I've never seen a unit more cowardly than them. Like I think. I like really, if I think throughout all of history, I cannot think of a single one that is as bad as them. Like at least other units, like the NKVD in the Soviet Union, or in other units from other sides, like we mentioned a minute ago. At least they had some sort of like diehard fanaticism going on that ensured that they had morale. I mean, they may have not had any training and hardly any cohesion, but they had morale. The Akhmat doesn't even have that. Like, they just have none of it. Like, it may as well already be a broken unit when it arrives on the front lines. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're about to be moving on to the next, but before I do, someone said, that sounds like a terrible idea. Deal with it during or no assassinations after the war. Did you hear, like, what the Mossad did after, like, World War II? They literally traveled the globe, like, on a world tour, finding Nazis and killing them. Like, they did that. And everyone applauded them when they did because those people were war criminals, and they conducted atrocities and somehow tried to escape and try and erase their past. And, of course, they largely did escape justice until the Mossad found them. And, you know, and if you can't get justice one way through the courts in Ukraine against these Akhmat commanders, I feel like that's not a bad move at that point to find these people and get them, because it sounds all high and mighty to go, the due process and no process, but you have to remember there are people who are living with the scars of what these people did to them in occupied Ukraine. Things that are so bad, if we even said the word that they did to these people, we would probably get a community strike on YouTube. There are people living with that kind of mental anguish the rest of their lives. Hundreds of people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people inside of Ukraine have had horror stories about dealing with the Akhmat. Not only that, the Russians have horror stories about dealing with the Akhmat. There are videos out there of what the Akhmat's done to some Russians. I feel like everyone deserves to know the fact that regardless whether these people are brought to justice inside of a Ukrainian court or they're found outside of their house chopping wood, they're going to have justice brought to them one way or the other, especially for all the Ukrainians that suffered through the war because of those people in particular. I'm not a big fan of doing anything like that, unless if it's someone who completely avoided justice, like a Nazi SS officer in World War II or the Akhmat. Like, really, no other Russian unit I would propose that for, except for the Akhmat. Maybe because, maybe I think that, and maybe I'm really hardcore on that, maybe a little bit more than normal. But that's because I've seen a lot of the atrocities those people committed firsthand. They filmed them. They filmed them like it was trophies. I mean, they were chopping off people's heads. They were turning people in no better wordage into eunuchs. I mean, they were assaulting people, both physically and in other forms. I mean, they have done horrendous things. I mean, the things that are atrocious. You wouldn't even believe it if you saw it. And I've never seen any Russian unit conduct the atrocities that these people do on this scale. And for that reason, I believe that they should be hunted down if they cannot be brought to a court after the war. Just that unit. I wouldn't support that for any other unit in the Russian army. Sure, they conduct atrocities, but not like the Akhmat. The Akhmat is a special group. They're disgusting in every single sense of the word. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. Huge thanks to you once again, Trister1, for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to cover the news, or we wouldn't be able to say things like that. And also, I see a lot of people in the chat saying different things that they did, and all of that's true. Like, I've never seen any of that not true or backed up with video and picture evidence. Every single one of those is true. Those people deserve some form of justice, even if it can't be brought by a court. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's time for us to move on into Kursk, because we have seen that some decent and interesting actions have still been going on within the Kursk Oblast. And moving on into the city of Kursk, we actually got to hear the first bombshell. Wagner stated that Wagner never entered Kursk. They have never even returned to Russia. And this is actually shocking because, Matthew, remember the Russians said they were bringing the Wagner back. The Wagners come out now and they said they never came back and they never will.
So that pretty much confirms it, basically. They went to Belarus. Honestly, I think they're still in Africa. Like, I don't doubt that. But I think they were sent to Belarus, probably because of the reason we've been talking about, probably because they are trying to stage a potential invasion of Ukraine. And Wagner is basically more useful being in Belarus than in Kursk right now, which is kind of odd because, you know, you would think you would send the reinforcements to the Russian territory to hold off the Ukrainians. But honestly, though, if it was me in charge of the enemy forces of Russia, I'd probably send the Wagner up to Belarus instead, because that would force Ukraine's hand to withdraw the troops immediately from Kursk to have to reinforce their rear line. So that actually might be a smart move by the bastard Putin.
Maybe so, but still a pretty interesting move nevertheless. But moving on from that and down into the actual battle of Kursk, we also got to see that apparently the Russians have low morale because they're not getting paid. They're only getting paid about $300 a month right now to fight the Ukrainians, instead of the actual combat pay that Russians are supposedly paid when they enter Ukraine of about $1,200 a month. Here's the clip of one of the Russian soldiers fighting in the area saying this very thing.
Мне сказали, что мы подписываем контракт на СВО. Не просто как контрактники, которые сидят в Москве и каждый вечер могут вернуться к своей семье, попить кофе, посидеть на диване. А мы СВО, мы живем в грязи, в болоте. Иногда не доедаем, не досыпаем, потому что работаем работу. Но тут получилось так, что мы 4-й месяц уже получаем по 34 тысячи. Как вы думаете, может ли семья прожить на такие деньги, с учетом того, что еще некоторые финансовые средства нам нужны и здесь? Купить салфетки, сигареты, кофе, чай, сахар, потому что мы это все приобретаем сами, нам никто ничего не дает. И вот возникает вопрос, а какого хуя мы получаем по 34 тысячи, если мы СВОшники? С какого хрена наш полк, 30-й губернаторский, блядь, элитный полк, который собирал воробьев, который должен был стоять, и по бумагам он проходит как оборонная охрана Белгорода, а у нас полполка уже полегло в Волчанске, и сейчас нас перебросили на Курск, и мы находимся сейчас здесь, на направлении Суджа. Но по бумагам мы в боевуху не заведены. По бумагам мы просто охраняем Белгородскую область. Так вот, возникает вопрос, кто когда в этом всем бардаке разберется. Я был в администрации президента. Я обрисовал всю эту ситуацию там. Меня перенаправили в главную московскую прокуратуру. Я написал в письменном виде, изложил все на бумаге.
I don't know about this, Matthew. I always feel like this is really weird. Do you notice that everyone in Russia always appeals directly to the president's office? Like, no one actually even tries, like, the regional administrations or anything. They just go straight to Putin.
Yeah, they're not going to get anywhere with the low-level people, low-level leadership. They're basically there to prevent you from getting to Putin. And also, it's like, you know, Putin's not going to do anything. He doesn't care about you out there on the battlefield. Otherwise, you wouldn't be out here, like, in harm's way like this over nothing if he cared about you. But also, another point is, this guy's griping about pay and stuff like that. What amount of pay would make it worth it to go into this type of danger, to basically go into a meat grinder and get killed? How much money does he want for that?
I mean, hell,
I mean, $1 million wouldn't even cut it, really, if you think about it.
I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I think if we give him a Happy Meal and some fries, he would be happy. Me personally, I think he'd be much happier.
I think he's got that, but he wants more than the Happy Meal. He wants the jumbo meal.
Man, no, we ain't supersizing it. Like, it's past 11. We are not supersizing.
Мое заявление зафиксировали, но результата никакого. Моя семья живет в долг. Почему? Я не понимаю.
Was his family like cars and automobiles? It got dents?
Мы будем работать до конца. Мы работали, работаем и будем работать. Будем защищать покой ваших семей.
BK said,
Но кто
"What is this guy's
позаботится о наших
deal?
семьях? Почему
He's
наши
upset and angry about everything because he's on the losing side. That's why he's
семьи
mad."
брошены?
He's like, "Where's my money, damn
Как
it?"
им жить?
He's like,
Как выжить на это все? Я хочу, чтобы разобрались во
wait,
всех
was
этих
someone
вопросах
checking out something at a Walmart in the background right there? Listen to
покой
this.
ваших семей. Но кто
Like, did you hear that?
And there's cars revving. There's Walmart cashiers. Like, I would love this guy to turn the camera around to see what's going on behind this camera.
Man, it probably looks like a dream or something over there. Like, there's like cars like doing like burnouts like in the front Walmart lobby while someone's checking out or something
кто
like that.
позаботится о наших семьях? Почему наши семьи брошены? Как им жить? Как выжить на это все?
There it is again.
Oh,
Я хочу, чтобы разобрались во всех этих вопросах и получить хоть какой-то ответ. Нам не нужны обещания. Мы разберемся. Нам нужны результаты. Мы работаем, и у нас есть результаты. А где ваши результаты?
Well, that's the
Also, I don't know what his comrades think when he sees him over there, like whispering the stuff in the corner like that. I don't know if they're like, "Oh yes, I agree with this Bliad. He's so right," or are they thinking like, "Huh, he's a traitor in the corner. Like we'll have to get him later."
Nah, man. What they're probably thinking is, "Bloop, that'll be 362." Damn it! Like if there's something like that, that's probably what they're thinking instead. But
Oh,
anyway,
Bliad, at least the Walmart has raised the minimum wage, Bliad.
Блядь, at least I'm getting paid 60 cents an hour. At least the grass is a cheap, blad. But anyways, moving on from that and into the area around Kromsky Buliki, we also got to see that more Russians were captured. Not an incredibly large amount. It was just 2 of them. But 2 more captured is showing that the Russians are still having a little bit of a rougher time in this area. Not only that, but near to the area of Koronivo, we also got to see the 80th Brigade inside of Kursk as well. Check this out. We see him rolling forward through the trees.
You always get the full appreciation for the weight of a tank or a vehicle like this when they roll through the trees like that, and you're like, damn, they're just like crushing those trees, like just flattening a path with no like effort whatsoever.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that this thing isn't really that heavy compared to an Abrams. Like, this thing is like maybe about 60% of the weight of an Abrams. And that's the end of that clip right there, but still showing a tank in action in this area. Moving on from that and into the Reka Sim, we have seen a whole myriad of things going on in this area. First, we got to see that a pretty decent-sized substation providing the power to Glishkovo was hit today by an FPV drone, probably knocking out power to the town if it even had any at this point. Boom! And dead on the nail. And also heal. Also, I see someone continuing to argue this point in the chat. Apparently may have taken vacation, not seeing what happened. No, we never forget or forgive the hot dog man. Hot dog man never get forgivens. Like, I don't even have to go into that. Everyone who's been here for a while and knows who that guy actually is knows that the guy is sick. He's threatened our lives. He's threatened our families' lives. He's doxed us. He's harassed us. Like, no, I'm not forgiving the guy ever for that. Like, it's not like if anyone should be asking for forgiveness, it's that guy, because we didn't do anything to him. We were the ones who got doxed and harassed. We just make fun of the guy because he doxed and harassed us, and honestly, we make fun of him because that kind of stuff pisses us off a great deal about what happened. But moving on from that, we did get to see that a pontoon bridge near the bird bath ended up disappearing. We can see the bird bath right up here. That's this little special part of the river that kind of looks like a bird that's getting ready to lean over into this little lower part of the river. If y'all see what I'm saying here. So it looks like it's a bird in a bird bath about to like dunk itself into the water. So we call this little area of the river the bird bath. They set up a pontoon bridge here finally, and then the next day it's gone. Like, we can actually see the landings where the bridge was made, but we still don't know where in the world the bridge went. We believe it may have been destroyed. It does look like the ground caught on fire nearby, maybe showing that the bridge actually got hit and then the surrounding area caught on fire due to the explosion, but still showing that one of the new pontoon bridges was destroyed. But then the Russians are desperately trying to make another, and they made one near to the area of Zavano, and this one is right on the very western side of the town. Here is a picture of the bridge. Here's a picture of the destroyed bridge up here at the top of Zavano. Here's where the other one is, and they actually tried to make some sort of like a beaten dirt path to it to try and make transport a little bit easier. Or let's see if we can actually see that up here. Actually, this little road existed already, so apparently they built this on the existing road right here and then crossed the river and then access this little path right here to get into the rest of the town. So they now have one operational bridge in the entire area to move the entire brigade across or any supplies across. We have a feeling it's probably not going to last that long. It's probably going to end up getting hit again by artillery, and that one will be knocked out as well. The Russian brigade on the southern side is still stuck down there from what we know, and that situation isn't changing or improving anytime soon. Moving on from that and into the area of Bolshoi Soldatskoy, we also got to see that the Ukrainians ended up capturing an African mercenary, apparently brought on the promises of getting paid well. He's now going to be in a Ukrainian prisoner of war camp pretty well.
Расскажи, какие боевые задачи перед тобой были поставлены?
Я был командиром гранатометчик Армении. Огневая поддержка обеспечил огневую задержку.
Обеспечивал огневую поддержку. Кому?
That's seeing that clip, but still, once again, doesn't appear the Russian mercenaries are having the same kind of luck that the Ukrainian mercenaries have had so far, or the Foreign Legion for that matter. Moving on from that, and down into the area of Belitsa, we also got to see that the Ukrainians ended up capturing a Russian BMP today, of all things. There's a BMP too!
Oh yeah, look at that. That thing's squeaking. Needs some WD-40. Man, they must be celebrating with a little bit of that vodka.
Man, look at that.
Сука, за то, что ты меня бросил, тебе кофе, блядь, скотина ёбана. На, братанчик. А я бэху услышал, хуй знает где. Говорю,
Was that a little drink?
What, when a little drink in the cup?
хуй знает где. Говорю,
Some hand him something.
I can't tell what it is. It might be a drink. Wacky slosh. That thing bleeding, B. But anyways, moving on from that clip, does appear that the Kursk offensive is still going pretty well. We haven't heard a lot about the Ukrainians making advances at this point, even in the Reka Sim, so I'm not really sure what's going on today, but we will be waiting to see what happens tomorrow. Maybe, maybe it will end up, they'll gain more ground, or maybe they're starting to solidify their positions at this point. I still assume, however, that there will be progress in the Reka Sim direction, simply because it's such a strong area for Ukraine at the moment with the situation that the Russian brigade is facing right now due to the complete cutoff for the large part to everything north of the Reka Sim. So moving on from Kursk and on into our location unknowns, we also had an interesting amount of these today. We got to see the Ukrainians knocking out a Russian recon drone. And some pretty interesting music playing. And you see it trying to get down there to the Russian recon drone. This drone got way up there, man. This thing's like in space nearly.
Yeah, really. That must have a hell of a battery life on it to be going this far and this high.
Boom! Dead on the nail.
Oh,
pretty freaking good hit.
It's just cruising, looking for a bruising.
But man, it gets better. We got to see, well, it gets better in a second. I didn't actually have that clip next, but we got to see a Bodana SPG in action today as well. These things look really cool.
That does look pretty sick. I like that.
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool. And so, moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainians apparently nabbed a drone and were carrying it away. Take it away, boys. I forgot to describe why they're laughing like this. That's actually a Russian drone that ended up deploying its parachute and landing in this field, and they just ended up stealing it. So that's why they're laughing so much.
I thought maybe they had a little drink themselves.
No, you know, there's another soldier out there in the trees, Matthew, who said, I was in the fields of Ukraine in 2024, and I hacked a Russian drone and made it deploy its parachute or something like that.
You see, I put the drone in the trunk of the car, and I brought it out to the fields and I left it for dead. And, you know, I had to stage it like it was hit by a Madonna, but I didn't even know what that was.
Man, that's a pretty good. Man, that voice is killer good. But moving on from that, we also get to
Thank
see.
you.
You're welcome. But we also get to see some training of the troops in the 41st. Once again, they were training with a decent amount of Western equipment, Max Pros, 50 BMGs, great machine gun. Everyone loves the 50 BMG. It's a great heavy machine gun. We can see some CZ Brens. They're doing some trench clearing and training. And also one guy's learning how to use the RPG-7. Blast cap appears to have been already removed, but well, actually, I'm not sure. I can't really tell. But still, pretty cool to see the stuff. Hopefully, the 41st Brigade's new troops will be doing well on the battlefield soon. And moving on from that, we now get another clip of how the Ukrainians take down Shaheds. You ever wondered how in the world does a high-speed chase happen in air? Like, not with fighter jets, but with a drone and a helicopter. Well, this is how it goes. That's a Russian drone, that little blob right there, and this is a Ukrainian helicopter. The helicopter's chasing down the drone.
За ним вертолет. Да.
And there's a machine gunner up there who's shooting at the drone. They shot it down.
That's pretty damn good to, like, aim, like, even being that close in a helicopter.
And it's going down pretty freaking quick at this point. Oh, we can
Sounds
hear
like
it
a
now.
Stuka.
Oh! Dang, it
Well, that
sounded like a
audio was
racing
like so
plane.
delayed. That's crazy.
Dude, that thing sounded like one of those racing planes in, like, Nevada. You know, when they're flying around the cones, you hear that like that. It's like, dang, dude,
Yeah.
that thing was revving.
And they're always going to be sponsored by Red Bull, because whenever you do something crazy that could end your life, it's got to be sponsored by Red Bull.
Or better yet, it's like some like 60-year-old guy who did some really weird mods to his plane. Like, he cut down the wings a little bit, and it ended up making the plane go so fast, the plane pretty much broke because it oversped, and then the plane flipped up into the air, went careening right down into the audience below, and ended up taking out about 50 of them. That's another way that racing planes go, by the way. That's a real deal. Pull up the Reno, I believe it was an air crash incident. Someone ended up clipping the wings on their P-51, and the aircraft ended up going so fast because of that, that it ended up I think it ended up destroying the trim on the elevators, and so it literally just snapped while he was flying because it was going so fast. And the airplane banked upwards so hard because of that, so quickly, that the guy actually passed out, overg'd. He lost control of the plane, and then it ended up on the return trip back down, slamming into a crowd of people and taking out about 50 of them. It was one of, like, the worst, like, I guess you could call it air show incidents in America in history, due to the number of fatalities. It was a pretty unfortunate event, actually. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report. And I mean, I'll be damned, it's pretty good.
Oh, they got 3 Bobcats today. I'm telling you what, that's crazy to see that. And also the other losses are crazy as well. And Forster, when you get done telling us these current losses, if we could see yesterday's, that would be a miracle. But tell us more.
Well, we got a lot to tell you about. 1,280 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. Pretty crazy stuff. We also get to see 19 APCs, 58 supply trucks, 12 main battle tanks, 52 artillery pieces, 120 drone, 1 MLRS, 103 cruise missiles, and 3 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. It was a very good day, but we have to get the day before. We have to get yesterday's. And so let me go and try and grab yesterday's. And it should be a little bit further down.
Oh boy, Enforcer, we're having terrible difficulties. It looks like X is down for me at least, and it looks like it's down for a ton of people. Also, AT&T is reporting major service disruptions, and apparently a lot of stuff's down right now, including some 911 stuff. So it looks like we're being hacked again. What do you know?
But the
13 Bobcats.
But the Lee Spring Army never dies, my boy, because I got the casualty report for the other day, and my buddy is hit high. 1,140 Russian soldiers wiped out, along with 13 Bobcats, 17 APCs, 80 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 47 artillery pieces, 39 drones, 1 MLS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. It was a very good day. We love to see it. It's great to see, and hopefully they'll continue to knock out a high amount of Russian forces and continue to make sure the Russians aren't doing that well in the war. Moving on from that and into the northeastern area, we also get to see the SBU attacking some Russians. We don't get to see that clip, apparently a little too much, but moving on down to the area around Cherno-Popivka, we also get to see the Russians getting slapped. And we're going to be muting that dubstep trap remix. Yoinky Sploinky, but we can see it fly right into the rear door of that Russian APC. And, oh, it was a delayed explosion. Oh, a miracle.
You gotta love it when you see a big charbroil like that in the middle of a field and some military equipment getting, burned to a crispy. That's always good to see.
Man, I'm telling you what, it is very nice to see, and it's good to know that another Russian armored vehicle ended up biting the dust. Meanwhile, down in Bakhmut, the Ukrainians started hitting it with JDAMs. Interestingly enough, here's the clip. It was actually dropped by Su-27s. But here it comes. Oh, down on the nail. Can we get another one? Can we? Oh, waiter. More JDAMs. Oh, and we got a second one. And with that, that's the end of the clip. Pretty interesting to see, but still great to know that they're hitting those Russians down there, here and there. But moving on from that and down into the area around Hrodivka, we also got to see that the Ukrainians were apparently firing on some Russian positions. This was actually the Sheikh Mansur Battalion, which was pretty interesting to see. So here's the clip. By the way, to remind y'all, the Sheikh Mansur Battalion is made up of Chechens fighting on the Ukrainian side. Unlike the Akhmat, the dogs they are, the Sheikh Mansur Battalion is actually a pretty battle-hardened and pretty well-seasoned unit that does quite well on the battlefield from what we can tell. See him taking some time to write on the shells.
It's just like sign me a rocket type deal.
Something like that, I think. Oh, added in audio. I like that. They're really adding in that audio. And it's just dead silent. It's like, well, what now? It's like, what do I do now? It's like my eardrums aren't getting blown out. Well, I guess it'll happen again. There's 4 minutes of this, by the way, of them hitting Russian positions around the area of Pokrovsk.
Boom.
Bada boom, jugga jugga, and then I do like 3 replays of it.
Yeah. Boom, jagga jagga. He said, I'm saying this so often I'm going to have the POW say it. You don't say it. It's not a choice.
You say it or you're going back in the pit. Or something like that.
I said, yes, Madyar. Bada boom, jagga jagga.
Man. I'm telling you what, man. It's crazy to see.
Man, I'm going to turn on subscriber mode because, like, tonight the bots are coming in and, like, my attention span is kind of low for some reason tonight, so I'm trying to get them weeded out. So let me go turn that on.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, with the chat flying the way it does these days, it's hard to keep up with it at all. I'm going to be honest with you, because we've had, on average, about 100 chats a minute the entire stream. And this is actually on the low end for most of it, with 100 chats a minute, so it's kind of hard to follow. But we now see them loading the next round.
По кацапам за наших братьев совместно.
What is that guy holding?
Нашими побратимами.
Which one?
Is that a phone or like the crystal from like the Avengers or something?
That is the Tesseract, Matthew, and I'll not have you call that a crystal. Like,
Man, that thing is glowing like exceptionally bright. Like it's got an aura around it.
Dude, my man's carrying around one of the radioactive cores for a nuclear power plant. He's like, here we go, guys. Slava Ukraine. He's like, dude, what do you have in your hand? It's like, get the thing out of there. Like, more added in audio.
Damn, there you go.
Dude, like it's like, dang, dude. And now it's just dead silent. Like, I don't really know what to do because, like, the audio makes me not want to say anything because I feel like there will be more audio, but then it just goes dead silent. So then it's kind of like this awkward silence. Well, we can see the Russian vehicle smoking.
Let's see, I saw someone say, are you guys aware of the hybrid warfare that Russia has been engaged with Finland and Poland? Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a given at this point. Like even NATO said that. There's a whole like shadow campaign to go around to NATO bases and send saboteurs in to try to destroy stuff. That's not just for the bases, that's also for the infrastructure of Europe as well. And we're seeing that every single day. And we're also hearing that NATO bases are being disrupted because of that as well. So that's definitely a surefire thing.
Yes, very true. Yes, indeed. Well, with that, I think we're safe with rounding out this clip right here. Once again, showing the Sheikh Mansour engaging and knocking out Russian forces around the area. And we also got to see some fire support conducted by the International Legion in this area as well. We see them moving through one of the buildings. See him adjusting something on the 50 cal. Wait a minute, was he screwing in a new barrel? I can't tell. Actually, oh no, he was screwing in a new barrel, a fresh barrel for a fresh can of 50 BMG. That's pretty cool, by the way, how the 50 caliber's barrel just kind of screws in and out. It's pretty neat to me. I like it.
Is that a Browning?
A Browning 50 cal? Yes.
Okay, I was making sure. For some reason, my head was saying Barrett. I was like, no, that's not Barrett.
No, this is a Browning 50 cal made by John Moses Browning. He's the one who designed the 50 BMG round as well.
And I love this silent time in these videos right here. It's really weird how it goes so loud and so quiet.
Oh. Well, we didn't have to worry about it too. It looks like they're using the 50 BMG in almost like an area denial role, just by, you know, laying down a little bit of consistent, you know, like rifle fire at a really long distance. They're kind of just denying an entire area to be used by the Russians at this point. Kind of like how the British started to use the Vickers by the end of its life in the 60s.
The Ukrainians giving out some of that lead pie.
Man, they're giving out knocks at the door, man. It's like, dang, man. Another can of 50 BMG. Waiter, another can of 50 BMG. Why, yes, sir. Another can of 50 BMG.
Yeah, did you see that pile of casings on the ground?
Yeah, man, they've been laying it down.
Нет, 5 коротких. Как принял? Нету, 5 коротких. Давай, пошли. Да там скрой, малый.
Oh, more ammo, sir. Yes, of course, sir. More ammo for our favorite boy. And you got the devils on the radio. Yeah, I will sell you 5 songs. Or something like that. It's like, okay. Overheat. And that is right, Steve Smith. They replaced the barrels because they overheat and they melt.
Seems kind of like an interesting strategy, like to just keep firing like bursts like that over and over, considering they're stationary. It seems like it'd be really easy to like beat in on that location, then like send in some artillery or something. But I guess they got it like figured out.
And they got it down to a science, man. They do not have no fear, the Ukrainians here. But beyond that, the Ukrainians are having a little bit of a rough time in the area of Pokrovsk. The Russians are still making small movements here day by day, but they are inflicting pretty decent casualties on the Russians. So kind of balances out a little bit, but still a bit of a concerning situation. Moving on from that and down towards Marinka, we also got to see some Russians getting hit down here today by the 46th Brigade. They got your travel music. And speaking of traveling, folks, our vacation is actually coming around. Like, it's going to be coming around here in a while as we watch the 46th Brigade wipe out these Russian forces. I actually told Matthew tonight that I was probably going to start telling you all about that on the 1st of this month, but we do know when it's going to be coming. I'm gonna hold back that information for a little bit, but everything's been finalized. We will be on the move and on the way onto a short little vacation. With that, I hope y'all know. I hope y'all know because we're going to be telling y'all about that as much as we can. Like, not where we're heading in anything for OPSEC reasons, because we got clowns like Barrett here in the chat who are hot dog people, and they would probably try and find some way to harass us or have us injured or killed or something on this trip. So we're not going to be telling anyone where we're going, but we will be saying when it is, because all of the streams during that time will be canceled. We will not be able to run a stream because we will be off elsewhere doing really fun things, hopefully, and really enjoying our time. So we finally have it ironed down as to when. But moving on from that and into the next bit of news, we also got to see hitting down here the Ukrainians in the 44th Mechanized Brigade hitting a Russian tank. Also, Mandy, I was very interested in why that guy was here all night, because I was like, I've seen this guy in the Hot Dog Man chat before, like a while ago. I was like why in the world are we even talking to this guy? It's like, it's a little stupid like that we even did.
I just kept asking him. I said, "You're over here telling us to like, make peace and stuff like that. So have you told the guy who like actually instigated the fight, like he might want to like, apologize for all the wrongdoings he's done?" It's like, and they never answered the question. I was like, okay, they're just here to troll. That was it.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, eventually you're gonna ban him. I was like, eventually you will. And then they said, my family was in World War I and World War II, got nothing on the forces bloodline. It's like, that's really
That's
stupid.
What did it for me.
Yeah, I was
that's what did it, man. That's what caused me to ban him for saying that. I was like, are you joking? It's like, we've had like family members serve in the World Wars. It's like, why would you even say that?
Well, hell, we had family members die in the World Wars. Like, we had one guy on my mother's side who was a flamethrower in World War II in the Pacific. He ended up getting killed, and the pack on his back burned him alive. And they said that what they brought back to America to be buried in Mississippi, it was like his remains fit in a shoebox-sized casket. There was nothing left of the guy. So it's like, that's a little stupid to say something ridiculous like that. And also, regards to the hot dog people, sad little angry community of people that still keep at it somehow, some way. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see that the fire at Proletarsk, while almost out, is still burning a little bit. We can see that the damage was significant.
Для истории, Паша, для истории. Тихо, не ругайся, не ругайся. Это в музей.
Музей, поле чудес.
Да. Вот что осталось. 15
And there's a little bit of the fire left, so it's still burning.
За неделю ухандохали.
And with that, dang, man, I keep forgetting about it. You keep on reminding me about that thing, and I'm trying to just make sure to roll on through the news because we're starting to run overtime. But a lot of people have been talking about Ukraine has called an urgent meeting of NATO leaders, and a lot of people are wondering what they will ask. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking they will ask, if anything?
All right, so we have heard for a fact that Ukraine has called an emergency meeting of NATO leadership. It's going to be behind closed doors to my understanding, but the big question is, what do you think they're calling this for, and what is Ukraine going to ask for? So 52% said Ukraine will ask for new permissions to strike into Russian territory, 26% said that Ukraine will ask for more weapons and money, and 16% said Ukraine will ask for troops on the ground. And me personally, I would rule out the third option. I doubt Ukraine's going to ask for that. And even if they did, that would be a hard no. Not too much deliberation to have on that one. I would say that probably they are asking for new permissions. I would say that it probably comes right on the heels of the U.S. basically saying you can't shoot too far into Russia because it might upset Vladimir Putin, and we don't want to do that. And that's probably why Zelensky wants to meet with the NATO leaders, is to tell them basically, you need to back off the permissions. You're literally preventing us from winning the war, and unless you back off of that, we might not win the war. So that's probably why he's calling it, but there could be other reasons as well. For example, there could be some provocations from Belarus. That could be one reason they're calling it. There's several different reasons, but I would say it's probably new permissions. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also agree it's probably for new permissions, probably specifically because of the Kursk offensive and also the Belarusian buildup. That's probably what they're going to be asking about, is specific permissions for specific weapon systems. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And moving on into our next bit of news, we also got to see satellite footage of the plume from the fire at Pokrovsk, and it does look like it's finally starting to die down a lot, because of course, a while ago, we actually saw this plume extended all the way across southern Russia, pretty much to Rostov-on-Don. Now it's pretty much relegated to the area around Pokrovsk again, and it is showing that the fire is finally dying down after 9 days of being a roaring inferno in the area. Moving on from that, we also got to hear more information about Omsk. We were able to hear that there has been a partial shutdown of the plant. Only 56% of it's operational. We can still see smoke coming off of it from the fire and explosion that resulted there. And we were able to hear that the refinery was crashing and burning the other day, and did get a little bit of proof of that as well. Meanwhile, moving on out of Ukraine and on to the Middle East really quickly to talk about this, we are hearing that there was some unreported explosions near, unconfirmed reports of explosions near Tel Aviv yesterday, about 36 hours ago. And then today, we were also able to hear from Western Iran that according to a U.S. government official, John Kirby, Kirby said that he believes Iran is postured and poised to launch an attack on Israel. And I'm sure, man, that you're looking at Kirby's adventure down here, which I was also looking at, and I was trying so hard not to laugh. Like, I was sitting there, dude, I was almost on the cusp of going, what the hell? And then, like, I was like, no, I'm going to keep it together. And then you started laughing. I was like, now I have to bring it up. Yep, it's Kirby. That's our guy. That's John Kirby right there.
Man, that's something else right there. I don't know who thought, who was crazy enough to like post something like that, like whose mind went to like the Kirby the cartoon or whatever. But it made me laugh. I gotta say, good one.
Yeah, that was a pretty freaking good one. So every time I think of John Kirby now, I'm going to think of Kirby. But anyway, so we got for
That's
that.
actually a pretty accurate representation of reality, I think. But anyways,
White House's Kirby says messaging to Iran. Well, you know what? Let me read this in the text, the way it's delivered, because it's not a very casual way of delivering it. So hang on.
Attention all towns and villages, beware! White House's Kirby says believes Iran is postured and poised to launch an attack on Israel. White House's Kirby says messaging to Iran has been...
But anyways, moving on from that, it seems to be a little bit of a serious situation still. We're not sure if the Iranians are ever going to attack, but it seems as though an alarm is being sounded off again, so we'll have to keep a little bit of an eye on this area. I'm not going to tell y'all anything's going to happen, but we never know. It's the Middle East. Anything can happen down here any day of the week, and it will literally just kick off right then. But anyways, moving on.
Oh, yeah? You think that Iran's gonna invade? Oh, yeah. I'm telling you.
What kind of a tough guy here? Hey, must be a bunch of thieves around here.
But anyways,
man, that's like something that Putin would say, knowing that the whole government's a corrupt like mafia, basically, and basically say, "Oh man, there's thieves around here." It's like, well, the whole government's thieves. Like, what are you expecting when you're like prosecuting people for corruption and theft while you're the main thief?
Man, dude, it's like being hot dog man and being like the king shithead, and then having other people do stupid stuff to you and being like, hey, must be a bunch of shitheads around here. It's like you were the leader of them. It's like, what do you mean? Oh man, like the endless Discord revolts. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Middle East, not really a lot to talk about there, and I'm not going to make that big of a deal out of it because we don't know what's going to happen anymore down there. But moving on from that and up into Kyiv, it is time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And let me see if we actually have one from today, because this one's actually from yesterday. Sometimes the president of Ukraine's website does not update with today's speech, only his YouTube channel does, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Actually, I can see why, because apparently he was at some kind of a forum today for about an hour and 30 minutes. So now I see why. And I'm not going to put y'all through that kind of a long-lasting speech. We'll just put y'all through this one. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Дорогі українці і українки, зараз ще триває ліквідація наслідків російського удару. Загалом було більше ніж 120 ракет різних типів і більш ніж 100 шахедів. Райони запусків ракет по Україні – це, зокрема, був і повітряний простір Курської області, Білгородської, інших прикордонних регіонів Росії. Також акваторія Чорного моря, територія нашого окупованого Криму. Кожен такий удар знов і знов повертає усіх нас до завдання далекобійності, до необхідності дати нашим силам оборони достатньо далекобійної зброї, яка може знищувати терористів саме там, звідки вони завдають ударів. Це оптимальна антитерористична тактика, на яку має право і яку точно застосував би для свого захисту кожен з наших партнерів, від яких ми очікуємо рішень. Очікуємо далекобійності. І фізична присутність наших сил у Курській області, наші активні дії по знищенню російської загрози на її ж території – це в тому числі спосіб компенсувати дефіцит далекобійності. Сьогодні почав цей день із окремої тривалої розмови з главкомом Сирським. І щодо відбиття цього ракетного удару детально, і щодо нашої відповіді Росії ми готуємо і по застосуванню F-16, і щодо операцій в Курській області продовжуємо наші дії у визначених районах саме так, як Україні потрібно. За цю добу є більше нашого контролю, є чергове поповнення обмінного фонду. Також головком доповів щодо ситуації на фронті на Донеччині окремо і на ставці про Покровський напрямок, найбільш важкий, найбільше російських штурмів, також Времівський напрямок, також Торецький, Курахівський. Є рішення щодо посилення наших позицій. Я дякую кожному солдату, командиру, кожному підрозділу, які роблять все, щоб знищити якнайбільше ворожої сили. Були на ставці сьогодні і всі необхідні доповіді щодо енергетики, стану системи зараз, можливості її відновити, роботи триватимуть цілодобово. Також детально розглянули ситуацію по захисним спорудам на енергооб'єктах. Щодо цього теж є кілька важливих рішень. Я дякую усім, хто дійсно вчасно виконує такі завдання заради нашої держави і наших людей. І ще одне. Провів нараду з керівниками правоохоронних та антикорупційних органів. Були також Генеральний прокурор, керівник Державної прикордонної служби України. Були доповіді по протидії колаборантам, по кримінальним провадженням щодо тих, хто виправдовує агресію Росії, служить цій війні проти України. Окремо розглянули питання щодо кордону. Щодо фактів незаконного перетину доповідали Клименко, Малюк, Сухачов. Щодо антикорупційної програми та стану всіх заходів доповідали керівники НАЗК, НАБУ і САП. За 2 тижні повинні напрацювати, представити чіткий план вирішення проблемних питань. Всі вони абсолютно зрозумілі. Потрібні дії. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 916 of the war. And that's moving us on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. It's an incredibly fun segment. Make sure to stick around for it and make sure to enjoy it, because it's the one part of the stream where I actually get to talk to all of y'all as as an actual thing, because the rest of it, I'm pretty much monologuing on all the news I was able to gather for today. But before we even get into this, I gotta say, I've been blown away tonight. The amount of people who have been here has been absolutely astonishing. 13,000 people were here tonight at the peak when the most people were here. There's still about 9,000 people here right now. And so far, about 76,000 people have watched this stream since it started. We are entirely honored and grateful to know that so many people continue to come to this channel and pick us to be y'all's primary source of news. I cannot tell y'all how honored and how humbled we are to have this kind of a position to be able to report all of this news to y'all, because of every single channel that y'all could have picked, y'all picked ours. I don't know why. I don't know what we do that is really unique and special, and I know many people will give an answer to that. I don't care what answer y'all give. I still don't know why y'all watch it. It blows me away every single day. But one thing I can tell y'all is that we're always happy to have y'all here, regardless if we can ever find out a reason why y'all really are here. We are thankful to have y'all here, and I hope that y'all have enjoyed the news that we have so far tonight, and I hope that y'all enjoy the next upcoming segment where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, because it's an incredibly fun time. We get to talk about anything and everything that y'all want to talk about. Literally anything at all. And so with that, Matthew, what are the folks wanting to talk about tonight, and who is the first question of this segment?
All right, so with that, it's now time for the final question segment of the night, the most highly anticipated segment of every stream of every night. That's an understatement. But anyways, we have no polls left to get to, so we're now jumping right into our Super Chat segment. So the first one here is going to go to Andy L, who put in a $50 donation, and huge shout out to Andy L, the channel legend, for that massive support. And Andy says, take one from the chat, and long live the LSA.
And long live the LSA, and a huge thank you so much once again for the support, Andy L, and helping this channel to keep on running. A channel legend through and through. And I gotta thank you for always being here in the live chat, and not only that, always helping this channel to keep on running as well, because folks like you make this thing possible. And Andy L, I know you've heard this so much, but it is true. Y'all are the ones who actually help us to do this as a living, as a full-time job. Unlike other YouTubers who try and hide the fact that they do this for a job and a living, we try and be as open and transparent about this channel and everything about it, about where the money goes and what it does. So instead of other YouTube channel, and I gotta say, I don't really like this at all. Like, even thinking about it makes me wince to say this. Unlike other YouTube channels who sit there and tell people, give me all of your money and some of it might go to Ukraine. Like, they use very sketchy wordage like a portion instead of telling you exactly how much. They say a portion, which is very, very ambiguous, and it's worded that way for a specific reason. We try and make it very clear where y'all's money goes in the end in this channel. And a super chat, it goes to us. There should never, like, we make sure that there is never a pretense that it goes anywhere else. It goes to us, and if some of that ends up going to Ukraine, it will. Like $100 every Sunday, we can guarantee that, because I put in $100 to the fundraisers every single Sunday. But beyond that, y'all help us to be able to do this as a job. And if y'all want to support Ukraine through this channel, we then run Sunday fundraisers that everyone can show up to and support to their heart's content. And we try and make it as clear and transparent as possible. And I got to thank you so much, Andy L, for always enjoying this channel, the way we cover the news, our transparency with how we run this channel and everything else in the background. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make sure that this channel exists the way it does every single day, every single night, because we wouldn't be able to be here on air in the first place. And so I got to say a huge thanks to you once again, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the question from the chat is going to go to Michael Thomas, who says, why not offer the Wagner Group more money than the Ruskies are paying them to get them on Ukraine's side?
You would think that that would be a good idea, but from what I can tell, you can't really offer the Wagner money, because while they hate the Russian government now, they also hate Ukraine a great deal as well. And so I would have to say that from what I know, it probably wouldn't work. And if it did, I would still be highly untrusting of them, because if they could turn against the Russians, they'd turn against the Ukrainians as well. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a huge thanks to you once again, Andy L, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to get a live chat like that so early on. And before we move on to the next one, Barry Batron said something in the chat I took particular note of. He said, I like the transparency, but can I recommend you guys get out in the sun a little more? And we are trying. I promise you we're trying. Actually, I probably look a lot more tan than I did in the past. That's not saying a lot, though, because I was about as white as silicon and marble, when y'all last saw me. But I have gotten a little bit more tan because I've been out in the sun a good bit recently. But hopefully on this trip, we'll really get tan. We're not going to the beach. I'm just letting y'all know that. Like, we're not going to the beach, but we will be in a lot of sun, and hopefully that will get us a pretty good tan. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Aaron, who puts in a $100 donation, the largest super chat of the night. And huge shout to you, Aaron, for supporting our work and helping to keep the lights on. And he says, "Hey, enforcers, get a Happy Meal." Thank you. He said, "Put some rubber tires or some fins on your ride to stay safe on your vacation. And watch out for flying hot dogs. And take one from the chat if you want to. And please buy some frozen burgers that don't try to kill you. Love Ukraine." We threw all those away, by the way. Like, we had a whole box of those, like, little slider burgers that we were eating. We had to get rid of all of them because apparently there was something wrong with them. And I hate that because I actually like to eat those, and now I'm scared to eat them because they messed us up. So that's another thing down and out, sadly, for the food choices. But I guess I will force us to eat healthy. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for supporting the vacation fund, in a sense, and a couple of other funds as well. Happy Meal and some or some fence on your ride. That's interesting. I will say this. Our vacation, we have it all planned out. We know exactly what we're doing and where we're going at specific times. It is going to be incredibly fun. It's going to be kind of a vacation we've never had before, actually, because usually we have vacations where we kind of just, like end up showing up at a place and sticking around for a few days. This is a kind of like a traveling vacation, kind of like a road trip of a sort. So that's another thing that's good for the OPSEC side of things, is that we're pretty much going to be constantly on the move the entire time. So it'd be pretty hard for anyone to be able to try and, track us down or anything, at least. Unlike that other clown. But beyond that, I have to say, I hope that we have a lot of fun on this trip. There's so much that we're going to be able to do. It's not going to be a long one either, because to give you all a timetable for this, the streams that will be canceled are as follows. It will all be from, and let me pull up my phone calendar here really quickly so that way I can tell you all the days, because I'll kind of give everyone here tonight kind of like a preliminary rundown of when we'll be gone. So I just want you all to know this, by the way. We're not going to be gone completely, because if something big does happen, we will be putting out a short war summary on the channel. It's just that live streams will not be running on these days. So the first day that a stream will not be running will be the 14th of September on a Saturday. That stream will be missed. We will also not be running a stream on the 15th on Sunday, which is normally a Sunday fundraiser. We've been trying to figure out how to still run something that day. I'm not really sure if we will be able to, so we might have nothing out that day on the 15th. We might have a short war video, though, but that will be about it. Then on a Monday, of course, there's no stream anyways on the 16th, so that's pretty much already, no stream. On the 17th, on Tuesday, there will also not be a stream. On the 18th, there will not be a stream. And we plan to be able to be back to streaming by the 19th of September on a Thursday. So it's not going to be an incredibly long trip. It's actually a little short. Usually, whenever we go on a trip, it's like a week or maybe just a little bit about a week and a half or so. But this time we wanted to make it a little short because we do want to make sure to get back and keep this thing running. But we also want to make sure to be able to get out there and enjoy our vacation. It will be in America, and there is so much of America to see. It's going to be really neat. It's going to be really fun, and I absolutely cannot wait to get to it. And I got to thank you so much for that massive support, Aaron, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will be making sure to watch out for flying hot dogs, because while it always seems like it doesn't always seem, while it seems like at least temporarily, there's nothing going on with that situation. That sick group of people over there is always constantly trying to find a way to find a crevice or a crack in our defenses of a sort, as one could call it, and try and make our lives a living hell. They're always constantly working on that and trying to figure out something, so we aren't going to be giving them any of a chance on that, at least OPSEC-wise, with this vacation, because I know they would make it a hell. And then you'll have stupid people come in here and then act like we're the bad guys because our lives are a living hell, and we make fun of the guy and cannot stand him for that reason, and then we're the assholes because for some reason we're just not willing to let our lives be a living hell and say nothing about it. So that's always funny to me how that works, but hey, I guess it is what it is, right? But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Aaron. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, we did get rid of those little slider things. They they were rancid or something. I don't know what it was. The meat may have not been good, and so we had to end up getting rid of that thing and throw all those away. So we will be getting some sliders.
They were minging.
Man, this slider is ever minging. And then like fling them up in the air or something. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible so that we can do all of these things. And also, by the way, I want to put this out there to y'all. Like, while we are going to be ensuring OPSEC, OPSEC is a very time-sensitive kind of a thing. You know, it pretty much ends once you leave a location. So we have a plan to either upload pictures a day after we've been somewhere, or to upload them all after the vacation's over, because we are going to be taking pictures along the way, not to put on our YouTube community page or anything, but we will be putting them onto our Patreon, so that way everyone over there, we're going to be making it to where everyone, even if they are a paying or non-paying member, they will be able to see the pictures, so that way they can kind of see what we did, because while we have to ensure our OPSEC because of all the harassment and stuff, and we don't want to ruin the whole vacation because we're getting harassed or something, we are going to also make sure that y'all get to see a little bit of what we're doing, because it may even, I don't know, like, I'm not going to say this for sure, it may even weigh into some videos that we make in the future. I'm not saying that this is a trip that we're doing to make a video on. That's not the case at all. We're actually just going and enjoying a vacation. But depending on how some things turn out here over the next few weeks, we may end up making an endless stream of video documentaries for y'all to watch here on this channel, about 2 every month, and one of them may actually be on the thing that we're going to go and look at, or at least kind of try out a little bit. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again for support, Aaron, and helping this channel to keep on running. And Slava Ukraine! And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I might try to film some of it, like, along the way as well. To be honest, though, I feel like a goober, like, filming out in public, like, holding the stick in front of your face or whatever, the selfie stick, trying to film yourself in public and talking. Like, I've seen a lot of people talk like that, like, out in public. And I'm like, I don't know really how you can do that and not feel somewhat silly doing it, because you always kind of, like, draw too much attention to yourself doing that. But I will try. We'll give it a good attempt. Probably not the whole thing, but, like, maybe, like, bits and pieces, just to make maybe, like, a short video or something like that. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, we have a $50 donation from Flota Realty, and this is their first ever Super Chat on the stream, and a huge shout out for that massive support as well. We appreciate it, and also welcome to the channel if you are indeed new or a first-time Super Chatter. They said, would it pay for Ukraine to play mind games themselves, and to thank Lukashenko for all the donated equipment that he's preparing to send?
I thank you so much for support, Flota, in your first Super Chat ever to this channel. That is incredibly kind of you. And I would have to say, they could try and do something like that, but right now, the Ukrainians are trying to play it more on an official perspective, because right now isn't really in the Ukrainian mind, and usually the diplomatic sense, the time for trolling, because they're trying to see if they can actually make the Belarusians back off of what they think they're about to do. But if a conflict actually began and an invasion began, then they probably would do something like that, like right off the bat, and it probably would be true. I mean, I would bet you that a lot of the Belarusians would end up getting smacked around, end up abandoning their vehicles, and then they'd end up capturing a decent amount of them. I would have a feeling that would be the case. But you never really know how it will go yet. Like, the Belarusians could seriously be considering it, and maybe serious Ukrainian statements will make them back off, or not, who knows. But the Ukrainians probably want to play it more seriously at the moment until they actually see that an invasion is going to happen, and then they'll probably start to troll them a little bit by saying, hey, thank you for the donated equipment. It means a lot, and we will be using that a great deal. And so with that, thank you so much once again for that support. Thank you for asking a really interesting question, by the way, about mind games, or kind of PSYOPs, psychological operations as they call them. Because psychological operations really does play a big part in how countries deal with each other, or at least how wars are fought. A really effective way to conduct PSYOPs against the Belarusians is to make them believe that the defenses on the border are practically impenetrable around this area, and that they would suffer incredibly high losses if they attempted an offensive due to the minefields and other kinds of defensive structures that the Ukrainians have built within this northern area. That probably would be a really good way to play a PSYOP, is really upplaying the kind of defenses that they have here, but they still probably wouldn't want to do that yet until something actually begins. because there may be a chance that the Belarusians back off if they're not fully committed to this at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running for the first time ever. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one right here is going to go to Robert McCann, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Robert, for that $50 support as well. He said, do you think that Russia will use a tactical nuke on their territory? And will that draw in other nations' armies? And would an invasion by Belarus, would that draw in other nations' armies?
Interesting questions. If the Russians ever used a tactical nuclear weapon on their territory, it would most likely not result in anyone getting involved because the Russians nuked themselves in reality. And so no one would really get involved in that kind of a situation. At least I would expect so. You never really know in those kinds of instances. Something like that's never happened before, but I would assume most people would not get involved. Most people wouldn't care because the Russians ended up nuking their own sovereign territory. It wasn't really an aggressive action. It would be viewed more so as a defensive action, even with it being a nuclear weapon. But with the Belarusians invading Ukraine, there actually is a pretty decent argument that countries could get involved if that was to happen. We could see the French get involved. The French have said before that if something like that happened, they probably would get involved. We've also heard the Polish say some similar things, but at the same time, Poland probably may not get involved because the United States has Poland by the balls for the large part because the Polish get a lot of their military equipment from America, meaning that America has a pretty big say on what will and what will not go, because if the Polish do something we don't like, we can end up retaliating against that by blocking further sales of American weaponry or American replacement munitions and parts because they did something against their wishes. On the other hand, France is a completely different story. Their entire armed forces is built off of their own indigenous equipment, so France could actually do whatever they wanted to, and America could just say something like, no, don't do it, and France goes, whatever, and that's it. There's really no more repercussions that could happen to France, and not only that, you can't really sanction France individually, because France's economy is tied into the European Union. And so if you end up doing anything to France, you end up having to do something collectively against the entirety of the European Union, because it's a customs union. It's a unified customs union. That's why it's called the European Union. So with that in mind, the French are in a much bigger position, at least diplomatically and strategically, to be able to do what they want, while Poland's kind of limited by the weapons they have. That's kind of the double-edged sword about getting foreign weapons, is that you don't have to go through all of the development costs to come up with a proprietary weapon system made by your own country, which makes it a lot cheaper in the long run, but at the same time, it allows another country a foot in the door in telling you what you can and cannot do militarily, which is a kind of a major drawback of doing something like that. And that's why a lot of the major countries, if they have the money, they go through their own developmental routes, like the British, the Germans, the French, the Japanese, the South Koreans to a pretty decent extent, and the United States. All of these countries have the economic ability to research and produce their own equipment, and they do that because it makes sure that they're a lot more autonomous in the long run compared to their counterparts, at least in terms of military action, although there's still a lot that can limit them in other avenues. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Robert McCann, very good questions, by the way, but I hope that that does answer both of those the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Fachada, who puts in a $50 donation as well, and this is their first ever super chat on the stream as well. A lot of first-time super chatters tonight, and we appreciate that a ton, and a huge shout out to Fachada as well. They said, I'm curious, if Belarus does invade, what kind of experience does that army have, and will it be experienced soldiers or tons of people who have never seen combat before trying to invade?
That is a great question, Fachada, and to answer that question, Belarus has never been in a war. Period. Like, ever. Like, they have never been in an actual war as a country. Now, the Soviet-Afghan War, they were a part of the Soviet Union, so everyone in the Soviet Union kind of got to collectively experience that hell together. But as far as actual modern combat experience, because the Soviet-Afghan War was an asymmetrical war, a lot like the U.S.'s war in Afghanistan, so it really has no impact on how a modern war would fight or their doctrinal abilities. But in the modern day, Belarus has never been in a war, ever. Their entire armed forces have been inside of their country doing nothing for 30 years. And so as far as like, will there be extremely well-trained guys or extremely inexperienced guys? Even if they were contract troops, they are doctrinally inexperienced. Their doctrine is not molded by modern combat experience like other countries, like the United States. Our modern combat doctrine is evolved off of heavy amounts of wargaming and heavy amounts of combat experience, two incredibly vital and key elements to ensuring the health and longevity of a military's standing doctrine for the large part on how a war will be fought. Belarus doesn't have any of that. We don't even think they wargame that much, because from what we know, their entire military system is the Soviet military system. It's just transplanted onto Belarus only instead of the whole of the Soviet Union. They only conscript. You can get contract soldiers, but I don't even believe there's any kind of actual, from what I understand, if I'm remembering correctly, there's not a lot of volunteering that happens in the Belarusian armed forces. It's a lot of conscripting. Pretty much the entire force is conscript. They serve for, I think, a year or 2 years, which is a very, very short contract. So you pretty much get trained in your role. You serve for maybe about a year and then you leave. So no one ever really knows a lot about what they're doing because no one stays around in the military long enough to be able to know. Much like the Soviet military or the Russian army of today, the Belarusian army does not have a strong NCO corps of non-commissioned officers, which is a very integral part in making sure that lessons learned are passed on from generation to generation in the armed forces. They don't have that. From what I know, they, once again, like the Russians, have inexperienced officers coming out of military academies filling in those NCO roles, and so there is no experience inside of their army. So it's an entirely conscript force that has no real combat experience. They don't even probably have a modern doctrine. It's probably a Soviet armored warfare doctrine that they're working off of, which is about 40 or 50 years outdated at this point. And of course, the actual rank and file are completely inexperienced as well, and literally just got to their combat, I guess you could say combat units, if you want to call it that, because they just got out of training. So overall, the Belarusian military is wildly inexperienced and would not do well against a trained contract force like the Ukrainians largely have, although through the war, Ukraine has started to shift more so into conscripts because the wars like these are incredibly they're all consuming. They consume large amounts of equipment, large amounts of industry, and also a lot of lives. And so through the war, Ukraine has had to slowly replace some of their losses of the contract troops they had initially with conscripts. But still, from what we know, Ukrainian conscripts will be better off because they are working off of a westernized military system due to the reforms brought about by Petro Poroshenko in 2016. And so for that reason, they still would fare better than the Belarusians, even if it's a lightly armed unit going up against another lightly armed Belarusian unit. So from what I would understand, the Belarusians would be pretty bad off in terms of experience. It is pretty much a largely inexperienced conscript force that they would be using. They have no practical war experience or understanding of what a modern war looks like beyond what Russia's fighting right now, and for that reason, they probably will end up voting poorly and taking very high losses. And so with that, I hope that does address that as best I can. A huge thank you, Fachada, once again, for your first super chat ever and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that was kind of the in-depth answer you were looking for, and I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel enough that you would find it worthwhile to support the channel and help us to keep it running and to ask a question like that. I hope that it was well explained. I hope I didn't sound like I was stupid or anything, because I was trying to really answer all that off the spot on the limited knowledge I know about the Belarusian military. So thank you so much once again for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it's folks like you who keep on making this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Raynor Slava Ukraine, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout to Raynor, who's a longtime channel legend, for once again supporting the channel. He said something here in the beginning. What does that mean? What?
Bolognese.
I don't know what that part means, but I see the second part says Slow Ukraine. I know that part. He said LSA is the best. Take a question from the chat, and of course, Cult of Matt. I'll tell you what, he's repping the Cult of Matt. Thank you very much, Raynor. I appreciate that. He's a proud member of the Cult of Matt. You can join too. If you're a member of the LSA, you get a joint membership with the Cult of Matt. It's free of charge. But yeah, Enforcer, what's that first part say? Do you know the translation?
No, I don't. Do you have it?
Let me go
Like, do
get
you?
it. Let's see. Google Translate. Let's see. I said that like a 70-year-old trying to operate a computer. Google Translate. Let's see here. Let's see. Paste. Loaf. Let's see. Loaf, Slava, Ukraine. Interesting. What is loaf?
Loaf? What the hell do you mean, loaf?
It's hold on. Palyanitsa.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, I thank you for sharing that, Matthew, with us. Interesting indeed. I gotta say,
What? Man, that's a what are you doing all that for, man?
I don't know. I don't know what to take out of
Oh.
that loaf. I mean, I don't know. What am I supposed to do with this knowledge? I have like, what am I supposed to do with all this bread? Like, but still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Raynor Slava Ukraini, and also, thank you for saying that LSA is the best. It really is the best community out there by far, no doubt about it. No question. I mean, like, really, it is the best. You just can't top the LSA. It's a well-rounded, intelligent community. Unlike some other communities, which have gone very badly. You've gone sideways, really. I hate to see it. Very, very sad thing. Many such cases. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for being a part of the LSA, and we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And, of course, the cult of Matt is real. And so what do we got from the chat, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question this time is going to go to David Long, who said, what would you two do if you were the leader of Ukraine and knew Belarus was going to invade? And David, honestly, if it were me and I was in charge of Ukraine, sadly, there's not much you can do other than withdraw forces and put them on the rear lines and start basically reinforcing your population centers like Kyiv. There's not really much else you really can do rather than that, which is why this is such a... Honestly, if Belarus is to invade, while that is atrocious for Ukraine, that would be a smart move by Russia to get Belarus to basically go out on a limb and to do that, because it would put Ukraine in a very precarious spot and would actually put Ukraine at risk of losing the entire war if Kyiv were to fall. So, you know, rather than withdrawing troops, I'm not really sure what else they can do. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say that in my opinion, there really is not a lot that they can do, at least to me. I mean, it would be really hard to pull something off that would do well. If I was the president of Ukraine, like Matthew's saying, the only thing you can do is divert forces from other needed directions and move them there. So this could end up being a pretty rough thing overall. There's no way to really play it that well, at least in my opinion. Maybe they can end up managing a miracle. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping us to keep this thing running, Raynor Slava Ukraine, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Uncle Sam's Misguided Child, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Uncle Sam. He said, then out. I'm hated by my neighbors on trash day, like Putin hates you. LSA forever, and be blessed, Enforcers.
And I thank you so much for the support. Uncle Sam's Misguided Child, and all you misguided child. Beyond that, let's see. I'm hated by my neighbors on trash day, like Putin hates you. Why? What are you doing, Uncle Sam's Misguided Child? What's going on? Why do they hate you? What's going on here? Like, Matthew, do you know why?
Hated by neighbors on trash day. I'm assuming that Uncle Sam's putting out a lot of trash, and maybe he's got an HOA or something like that is real fickle and finicky about stuff like that. So that could be it. I'll be honest with y'all. I thought HOAs were a good thing and stuff like that. The more I've learned about them, I'm like, you know, I think if there was like decent, like fair-minded people running HOAs that weren't power hungry, they would probably be decent. But nah, I'm afraid not. Like HOAs are full of usually, not all of them, but usually full of pretty power hungry, like desperate people. But that's just my experience.
And also, it's like the goofiest kind of power that you can get. It's like that hall monitor kind of power. It's like, it's like, this isn't even like power worth fighting for or anything. It's like, I don't know. Like, it's like, this is a little silly to me.
It's not even real power. It's fake.
It's not even long-lasting power. Like, it's just stupid. Like, it's goofy power. Like, why have that kind of a power? But, you know, I'll have to be honest with y'all. I'm not a big fan of HOAs either, me personally. I haven't really seen them do much, at least in my personal experience. And also, when they do stuff, they do it lopsided. Like, they'll let some people slide, then they'll end up coming down on others just because they don't like them. Really stupid to me. If you're going to do something, it has to be fair. But you never see that in an HOA. You never do, at least in my personal experience. Maybe I'm wrong. Because someone's about to come in the chat and say, I'm in an HOA, and we do it right. Not, like, I'm not in your HOA, so I don't know. I just know about the HOA we experience. It's not that great. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that part well. I don't know why they don't like you though. But still, LSA forever, Uncle Sam's misguided child, and we will, and I mean we will make sure to take one from the chat. And so, wait, he didn't want one from the chat. Why the hell did I?
We're going to get one anyway because we've committed to it now. Uncle Sam, you're getting a live chat question because I want to grab another one from David Lung. He expanded on his question of what would you do if you were the leader of Ukraine and you knew Belarus was going to invade. David Long said, to add to the question, would you do a preemptive strike on Belarus? Me personally, no, I would not do that. I would advise against that because it's very likely, or well, not very likely, but it's like a 50-50 chance that Belarus might be doing basically a feint here to try to get Ukraine to withdraw the troops prematurely. That is a strong possibility. So without knowing, like for 95% certainty that Belarus will indeed and for certain launch an invasion of Ukraine, it would be, in my opinion, foolish to do a preemptive strike. But Enforcer, what would you say?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, it would be silly to do a preemptive strike, like Matthew was saying, because we don't really know if they've committed yet. Like, yes, they have the offensive markings on the vehicles, but have they really committed, or is that supposed to be some sort of a ruse? We don't know yet. So if we were to try and conduct a preemptive strike on them, then we've forced them to enter the war, because now they're dealing with one. So I would say still hold off and just wait and see what happens. If something starts to happen that's pretty bad, relocate forces immediately into this area. But beyond that, I would not really do much. Like, Ukraine's really in a position where they kind of just have to sit and wait and see what's about to happen. Because if they act too quickly in the situation, they could kick off something that may have not kicked off if, otherwise. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Also, Matthew, I saw Michael Thomas say, as a former politician, I can tell you that when your neighbors get a title, they get power mad and go megalomaniacs. I can tell you this, people who have any kind of power usually end up letting it get to their heads. And because that's actually an interesting point to bring up, Michael, because a while ago, I actually ran in my hometown for a city council position. And like actually ran, and like Matthew and me, actually it was a whole of family approach. We actually ended up running myself for election for a city council district position in my hometown. And you would not believe how corrupt that little town was when you actually tried to run. I was 18 years old. I had literally just gotten out of high school. It was at the beginning of the whole Wuhan whirlybird thing that this election was going on. And I tried to get out there and go on a premise of, let's beautify the city. Let's make the roads really nice. That was like the big one, is like, let's really improve the roads. And then another one was, because many people may or may not know this, is that our hometown is near Montgomery, Alabama. And if you're from Alabama, you'll know that Montgomery, Alabama is the equivalent of Fallujah. So everyone did not want to go into Montgomery because people die down there just about every day from something or another, getting shot, getting stabbed, what have you. So my plan was to also try and bring businesses, that people frequented that we didn't have in the town, like Publix, Chick-fil-A, other places like that. Pull them up into our hometown and have them there, so that way people could kind of be a little bit more isolated and self-sufficient in the town. That was my premise. That was my whole campaign premise. Improve the roads, bring a couple of businesses up there, have it where people can enjoy their time up there. That was it. That was my whole entire premise, and I was dedicated to that because it would make the little town we lived in a lot better. And as soon as I started to run my campaign, I started to put up my little campaign signs, the mayor was authorizing someone in the city that worked for the city, I forgot who it was, to immediately go and pretty much steal the signs off the road. We were following every single election guideline they had for where you could put these signs. We were putting them onto public accesses, on public property, stuff like that. And they were being ripped up everywhere, every single place. And so they did everything as underhanded as possible that entire time. It was insane what they would do. And so I figured out really quickly, just from that experience alone, that anyone with any kind of power will be corrupt to an unbelievable degree. It may be worse in Alabama because everyone knows that Alabama kind of has the country old boys thing that goes, where the old boys kind of run things and they'll do whatever to keep power to themselves and do what they want. That's kind of something everyone knows Alabama for. Maybe it's our state thing. Maybe it's something that's in y'all states as well. But anyone will screw you over in that kind of a position when given the chance, if their power seems to be threatened at all. And it wasn't like I was coming in with these extremely radical ideas or anything, like where you'd really want to shoot someone down and do corrupt things to make sure that it's harder for them to get elected. It wasn't anything stupidly ridiculous. All I was saying was pave roads and incentivize businesses to come to this town. That was it. Those were the premises, just to make life better for people. I didn't try to get that much into the whole mainstream side of politics thing. It was goofy to do that to me. I didn't really like it. And it was ridiculous. So they ended up getting their country old boyfriend elected. And what is so stupid, what was the stupidest thing about it, is that these people acted like what I was asking for was the dumbest thing ever. So then they end up bringing a Publix to the town, after we moved out of there, after that was all said and done with. They ended up moving a Publix into the town. They started paving roads. And so they pretty much did everything that I was wanting to do anyways. And it's what? It's well, so why in the world were y'all so against me? It's y'all pretty much had the same idea. The thing is that I wasn't in the group of old fogies that were running the town because I was 18 years old. And that's always been a huge knock against us for some reason, is that we talk competently, we say things competently, but we're 18 or we're too young or something. So the old fogey who was in charge of the town wanted their other old fogey friend who was there for 30 years to be in the city council and to pretty much get paid to do nothing. And that was that.
And it went a little deeper. It went a little deeper than that. We won't get into it on the air, but there was some pre-existing hard feelings and bad blood that was already existing that kind of made it even worse. That goes along with our last name a little bit, unfortunately. But it's just something you got to deal with.
Yeah, it's something you kind of got to deal with. But and also to tell y'all something, that was the experience, because beforehand I will say this. Before 2020, at least my experience trying to run for that city council position, I was actually a fairly political person. And then running that election and actually seeing how things worked, that is when I stopped being a political person, was during that election. Because I realized that trying to toe party lines or trying even affiliate yourself with certain groups, it does not matter worth a damn if you're actually trying to look out for people's interests, because both of those groups will screw you over the first chance they get, because you're not standing for the party's interests or this little clique's interests. You're standing for the people's interest, for the interests of everyone involved. And that is something that is a big no-go, because generally those kinds of interests conflict with theirs. So at that point, I was like, you know what? This is not for me. I'm more so for actually helping folks out instead of helping out folks in the little cliques that people get into. That's ridiculous to me. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because that's a good point to bring up right there. And it's something that I think people ought to know a little bit more, because I didn't realize it was like that. Because here's the thing, we have no politics on the show. We don't allow political discussion. We don't support or condemn either political side. We keep it very on the level, but that's because I kind of know what it really is. It's silliness. It really is. It's 100% silliness. And that's something that I hate to see people don't know. When people come in here and they're so fervent with their specific political beliefs of their political party that they will go to war with us and get banned on the chat because they just won't drop it. And I don't think these people know this. I don't think a lot of really political people know this. If you even went against those people that you're supporting so fervently right now, and you said something like, I don't really think that's fair, and I don't really think that's helping out anyone, they would screw you over the first chance they get. That's how politics works. It's a brutal system. It's very cutthroat. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people think, "Oh, I would die for this political leader." It's like, no, I would not. Like, none of them. I would die for this country, if it came to it, because there's hundreds of millions of great people living in this country. But I would never toe a party line to the point that I'm just like a diehard fanatic of them, because they're not diehard fanatics of the people that back up their parties. That's the reality of it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well about the whole power corrupts thing, even on a small level with like an HOA, because it really does. And it's a sad reality to look at. And I feel like with that kind of power, and the founding fathers of this nation were really on to something with us. I feel like checks and balances and also regulatory commissions are very important in ensuring that corruption remains as low as possible. But even still, with regulatory commissions, you can end up running into a great deal of corruption there. Really, wherever people are, there is a very high chance that corruption will ensue eventually, and it requires very diligent, upstanding people with a strong backbone that are willing to go against the grain if need be, to be able to put down corruption wherever it starts to rise and try and ensure that the system runs as efficiently and as properly as it possibly can. That would be my take on it. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so real quick, we got a poll running right now. This poll is evenly split, almost. It says, does power always corrupt people? 49% said yes, it always corrupts people, and 48% said no, it depends on the person. And I would definitely be with the 48% that said that power always corrupts. It always corrupts in some form or another to some degree. And just, for example, name one leader that hasn't done something at least mildly corrupt, and you're probably going to be hard-pressed to find one. And if you say, oh, I know this person, they've never done anything, I guarantee they probably have. There's just always skeletons in people's closets everywhere, and nobody's exempt from that. People may unintentionally do something corrupt that they later realize, that probably wasn't the best thing to do, and then, they've already committed a corrupt act. But corruption exists when people are involved. It's always there, and it'll never go away. But some places are worse than others. I saw somebody in the live chat saying that something about the Mississippi Police Departments, and they were in it, and they realized how bad it was. Trust me, that is not limited to Mississippi whatsoever. We have some terrible corruption in Alabama, not with just the politics, but just like local government and stuff like that. Just corruption everywhere. I don't know how other states really are, like exact science, but Alabama is rough when it comes to that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to generally say power always corrupts, especially absolute power will absolutely corrupt. Which was actually said by someone to Henry VIII. And y'all know what happened to that guy who said that to Henry VIII? Henry VIII had him executed because he was all-powerful at the time. He was pretty much an absolutist leader, or the closest that a monarch got in Britain to being absolutist. He ended up having the man killed because he said that. And that kind of proves the point that all power, that absolute power certainly does corrupt. That's why I feel like absolute power should never exist. And that's why I really believe in the American political system, at least in its original intended form, a great deal. Because the president is not an all-powerful being of the government, and neither is the Congress or the Supreme Court. There are built-in checks and balances to ensure that there is always something that someone has to report to. If the president does something out of line, he has to answer to the he doesn't really have to answer to the Congress, but the Congress can take actions against him. If either the president or the Congress do something out of line, the Supreme Court can strike down either. If the Congress does something out of line, the president can curtail that. It's checks and balances in its true unmitigated form. Problem is that it isn't entirely used well, and throughout it's not something that happens in the modern day. It's something that happens historically. Sometimes it's not used well. Sometimes people get away with doing corrupt things and nothing happens. But every time you see someone somewhere with some kind of power, they always do something corrupt. People don't know sometimes what corruption is, but appointing your family, for example, appointing your family members to positions of overseas companies because you did something for them and they make money off of that, that is technically nepotism. That actually is nepotism by definition. That is illegal. Or if you are elected and you, for some reason, really treat your family like a close little clique, and you end up putting some of those family members in specific governmental positions, that is once again nepotism. That is illegally, by statute, a form of an illegal act that a government official can make. There are all kinds of things that people do that is corrupt. Some people don't see it that way. Some people say, well, they're your family members. Of course, you ought to be able to appoint them to positions. But that's the exact point why they're not supposed to be appointed to positions. They're your family members. You're trying to set them up using your power unduly to be better off. You're not supposed to be able to do that with your power. You're supposed to be benefiting the nation, not specific individuals within your family. It's something that a lot of people do. And it's just something that I don't like to see. I'm not happy with it. I feel like I don't even know how these people end up not being ashamed by this kind of stuff. I knew if I was in these positions, I would be ashamed to do something like say, "Hey Matthew, I'm gonna appoint you as president of the United States. I'm gonna appoint you to be the postmaster general. You're gonna make bank." I would feel like a clown doing that because all of y'all would
I'm not
have
taking the
voted.
position unless I get $1 million a year. I'm going to tell you right now.
Okay, like but it's like like I don't know how these people don't feel ashamed because the thing is that y'all had to elect me. Like if I became the president, tens of millions of people had to have come together and trusted me to elect me. I feel like I would owe y'all a great service at that point, and dying service and devotion, considering that y'all picked me to lead the entire nation of 350 million people. I would feel like I have a great level of devotion to serve y'all as best I can. The worst way to serve y'all would be to start serving myself or serving my family and then appointing Matthew to a position like Postmaster General to make a load of money or to appoint him as an ambassador to a foreign country. That seems absolutely asinine. That's just crazy to me. Not to say that Matthew would be an incompetent Postmaster General. Hell, I think the post office would be run better under him than anyone, but he's still family. That's nepotism. You can't do something like that. That's
Now,
something.
see, I'm going to change my name and stuff. I'm going to get that realistic face mask. I'm going to come in talking about, oh, hello, hello, son. Could I have that job at the post? You're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can have the job. I mean, I don't know who that is. Like, man, that's what people haven't done yet. They need to put on like a face mask and like pretend to be somebody else, and then it's not nepotism anymore.
Man, put on the Groucho Marx like thing with like the mustache and the glasses and just show up and be like, yeah, I want a job. I think that would be fine. I think
Yeah,
that'd
that's
be great.
true. But though, everybody's like, where did all the honest politicians go? Well, I'll be honest with y'all. This isn't political. I don't like politicians at all. Politicians are out for themselves and stuff like that, and that's just a given. I think most people know that. But everybody's like, what happened to the honest politicians? Well, they lost. That literally, if you're an honest politician, you're going to lose. Because dishonesty always overcomes people in politics every single time. And unless you're willing to get down and dirty in that game, you're probably going to lose. So that's just the bottom line. Most people don't care about what's truth and not. They just care about what sounds good and stuff like that. And that's a shame. But I'll stop there. I'm about to get very political.
And you know what really kills the modern American political system on all sides is lobbyists. I mean, it is the worst at this point that it's ever been, at least in modern American history. Lobbyists, everyone agrees on this because if y'all don't know, I do watch people who are in politics, certain senators, former presidents, stuff like that from all sides because I'm not really that political of a person. I don't toe a line, so I just listen to everyone. And everyone right now that comes out agrees that lobbyists are the problem at the moment. And it is coming to a point where it's detrimental to the health of the nation as to what people will say to get elected, to get super PAC support, and also what they will do in office because these lobbyists are offering them certain things like jobs after they're out of Congress that will pay incredibly high salaries. I feel like there should be some sort of reform in the government to have a lot more accountability for certain kinds of corruption and also for lobbyists as well. I feel like there should be a heavy amount of congressional acts that are passed about lobbyists and what they can do and what they can guarantee. That would be
unless you grandfather those people in that are passing it, because it's just human nature. Nobody's going to do anything and go through the trouble of inhibiting themselves from making money. If you tell the politicians, let's go and pass this thing where we ban the super PACs, where you get unlimited political donations and things like that. Let's ban the super PACs. Let's put term limits. All that does is hurt the people that are trying to pass it. Why would they do that? They're not going to do that. So you have to basically grandfather them in and say, this won't apply to you, but it'll apply to the next person who gets elected and takes your seat whenever you get voted out. And they might maybe do that, but even at that, I'm not sure if they would do it, because, you know, they look out for themselves. There's kind of like this, like, you know, understanding between politicians that they kind of look out for each other. Kind of like with anything. If you're a police officers in a clique, they look out for each other. Lawyers look out for each other. It works like that in everything, and the politicians are no different.
Well, I have a bit of a plan. It wouldn't work, and it wouldn't be foolproof, but I have a little bit of a plan, because y'all know how we have this channel, like how we do this thing, and how we have a little bit of an audience here. What if that continued to grow? Like, what if, say, in the future, channel ended up having 20, 30 million subscribers? That would be one of the biggest channels on the platform at this point. And that would have a lot of sway on what things are said, what things are done. And let's say as I try and run for president, I leverage this channel and this community to try and make sure to bring about those sorts of reforms. Now, this would seem a little bit draconian, but this is really the only way to go about it without trying to bend to other people and compromise on this, because this is something that can't really be compromised on. Just use it, use the platform to end up making sure that people who vote against it, their names are read out. These congressional members were against it. They're clearly corrupted by the system that they're benefiting from. They're going to need to be voted out next time come around. Well, the next time an election comes around in their area, whether they be a senator or a representative, and then have them voted out. So hopefully by the time I would be going out as president, after hopefully 8 years, although, going on an aggressive campaign like that, I may only last 4 years in the office. Hopefully by that point, the next person in line could come in and then make sure to continue that legislation and it being passed. And hopefully there would be people in the government by that point that would actually pass it. That is a crapshoot right there that probably would not be possible. It would be very tough to pull off. But, who knows? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion, on what I would do, but that's just me. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one right here goes to Papa Kenny's Workshop, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Papa Kenny, for always supporting the channel as well. He said, I got no question, but please give a shout out to the state of Rhode Island, the Ocean State.
Hey, and a big shout out to Rhode Island, Papa Kenny's Workshop. I was about to say shop work. I was like, I know that's wrong. But hey, big shout out to Rhode Island, the smallest state in the United States of America. Pretty much just Providence and Pawtucket, which is kind of cool when you think about it. It's like, that's actually pretty neat. But let's see here. Providence Central Station. Where is the Providence Station? Where is
Providence.
it?
That's in Rhode Island.
Yeah, Providence, Rhode Island. He said, give a shout out to Rhode Island, the Ocean State. It's right here, Matthew. It's right here. I'm trying
I don't know what I was thinking. For some reason, I forgot we were looking at Rhode Island. I was like, when you said Providence, I was like, I think that's Rhode Island. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. Whatever.
Whatever. It's like,
whatever.
Whatever. Oh, look at that. There's the former Pawtucket Central Falls Railway Station, which is sadly in great disrepair at this point. It's very sad, because it was actually a really pretty station when it was in full operation, but they shut it down in like the 60s or the 70s, I think, never reopened it. And now it's kind of in a bit of a rough neighborhood. And the neighborhood turned rough because this thing shut down, actually, funnily enough. People didn't want to live near some giant abandoned train station. But look at that right there, Matthew. An Amtrak ACS 64, one of the electric locomotives that runs on the Northeast Corridor running the commuter services.
That's pretty neat. Isn't this like not too far down the road from that Pawtucket beer factory or whatever that Family Guy works at?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Also, here's the Acela, by the way, the Amtrak Acela Express. Pretty cool. But man, this
does look kind of dumpy though, like that whole little area right there. It makes the train, look really bad, like when it's going through there.
Let me see if I can put in the Pawtucket Central Falls railway station and show you a picture of what this thing actually looked like in its heyday. So, I'll be danged. They built a new one down the way. It doesn't look as good as the old one did back when it was in full swing. Let's see. Old Pawtucket Central Falls Station. Here we go. So maybe I can find a picture of this thing. So this is what it actually looked like when it was in service right here. It was really nice, actually. It was considered pretty advanced for the time as well.
Yeah, that is pretty nice. Art in ruins. Yeah, that looks nice. I'll be honest with you though, it looks like for some reason like a watershed or something like that. It's not my type of architecture, but it looks okay.
Yeah, but the inside was nice.
Yeah, the inside it looks like a courtroom a little bit, but it looks okay.
But man, I mean, I hate that this thing was abandoned, because here it was back, I think, when it started to be shut down, and here it is today. Things just completely dilapidated and fallen apart. The reason why they gave up on maintaining it is because it ended up being pretty expensive. It was built in a pretty revolutionary way where the entire building was supported by the beams under the building. So the tracks went right under it. So most of the weight of the building was actually on those beams. And the building was also wildly heavy as well, because it was made out of brick. The inside was well fitted out as well. And so it ended up being so expensive, they decided to cut it from the service and just shut it down and condemn it. And so it's been like that to this day. They built a new station down here, Pawtucket Central Falls, which I'll show you this one. It's modern, but it kind of loses that charm that the old one had, because it's a little too modern, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like,
let me see some more.
Let's see here. Here's one of the concourses heading to the platforms. Here's the platform again. Here's one of the walkways heading, a handicap accessible walkway that heads over to the platforms. I don't really like it that much. I like the old one better, like, just for historical reasons. And I feel like if
nothing like going to the train station and feel like you're showing up for your daily shift at the steel mill.
Yeah, I know, it's just too industrial. It doesn't have like any kind of charm or beauty to it or anything. I mean, it kind of, and also not only that, it loses the kind of theme of the area, because that train station further down, while it looks like garbage now, when it was in its heyday, it at least had theme. It looked like it blended into the area instead of just like weird, like ultra modern industrialist rustic thing that they built now. I don't really like it that much, but that's just me. But beyond that, Rhode Island is a pretty cool place, and I think the actual station for Providence down here is actually kind of cool, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this one's actually kind of one of the cooler ones. And so let me see if I can find y'all a better picture of this thing. Here's one of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority trains, which goes all the way up to Boston. And then let's see. What else? They don't really have a lot of pictures of the inside of the station, do they? Kind of hide that. Like, here's the central concourse again under the dome, which has some like waiting benches and stuff like that. I just don't like what modern train stations turned into. Kind of like how modern airports like kind of lost a little bit of their like elegance. Like everything kind of lost elegance for some reason, and we went to like simplistic architectural styles and designs that don't really evoke a lot of amazement or beauty at their designs and styles. They just kind of are unimpressive. And there's no reason not to have impressive and beautiful architectural designs, because the reality is that both buildings cost about the same. Like you can have an ultra elegant, really nice looking building and it costs as much as one of these buildings, because the extra trimmings and fittings don't really add that much to the overall cost. That's why people used to build them like that. It was as expensive to build them ornately and really nicely as it was to build them incredibly bare bones and simple. I don't know. I don't really like them that much. And I mean, there's some really impressive train stations that still exist. Like Matthew's actually a big fan of this one out in Chicago, and let me go see if I can find it really. Here we go. It's this one, isn't it? No, it's further up. It's further up.
It's the Union Central, I think.
This is the Ogville Transportation. We need to find the Union Station, which is somewhere around here.
I just don't. I used to actually be a fan of that modern architecture and stuff like that. Even the modern train stations and modern just a way of style and buildings. But the more you look at it, the more you realize like zapping and sapping all the style out of something and all the complexity. Overall, that gets old quick when you're looking at some minimalist, simplistic building. It starts like wearing on your mind after a while, and it really just dulls you down.
Maybe this is it. I don't think
No,
so.
that ain't it.
No, this ain't it. No.
That's ugly Bolshevik.
Let's see. Chicago, Union Station, I think it is. Chicago Union Station. Is this it? This is it. This is Chicago Union Station. Matthew thinks that this is the most impressive one in the country. Honestly, it really is. It's a really nice one. This is one of Amtrak's main hubs. This is where they run a lot of their legacy long distance routes throughout the United States West, the Midwest and the actual West. Most of them start here in Chicago at this Union Station, and it is pretty impressive. I mean, it's beautiful architecturally. It really has a lot of charm, a lot of style. Let me see if I can find you all a better picture of one of the main halls. This is one of the main halls. This is the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of major cities should be emphasizing, even in airports. I feel like this kind of stuff would be greatly appreciated, because it's nice to look at. It's visually stunning, and it has enough detail that you can actually look at it for a bit and marvel at the beauty of the thing, instead of just the ultra simplistic, bare bones kind of an architecture that's put out nowadays. You can actually feel proud about this stuff, and for good reason. And I feel like this stuff.
The only station that could probably outdo this one here in Chicago is probably like the New York Grand Central Terminal. But I don't think, is that an Amtrak station even? Like Grand Central Terminal in New York? I think that's just the Metro and maybe I think there's some railroad, like maybe the Long Island Railroad or something like that goes through there. I don't think there's Amtrak running through that. I'm not sure though.
Man, I'm really impressed. You're starting to learn your train stuff, like Long Island Railroad. How the hell do you know that? That's something that you only know if you've been looking around the New York area.
I just looked up the train station before and I just remembered it.
Oh, interesting. But also, do you know about the Harlem line? The Harlem commuter lines that go up here into the Bronx and stuff like that?
That's the Metro, isn't it?
Oh, no, actually, it's a completely different service. I forgot who it's run by, but I think it's still under the New York Metropolitan Authority or something like that. But let me go to Grand Central Station. Honestly, I don't really like Grand Central Station that much. I feel like it's a little overrated. Yeah, sure, it's cool. It was New York Central's train station back in the day, back when that was a company that existed. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just not that big of a fan of Grand Central Station. There was a station that existed in New York time before that was actually even more impressive than this one. They tore it down. It's where Madison Square Garden is now, but it was called Penn Central. And let me see if I can find y'all a picture of Penn Central Station, because a lot of people regard it as probably one of the most beautiful looking train stations in America, and it was the one that was demolished pretty much first. This was it.
Well, that was interesting looking. It actually looks like it could have been nicer.
Dude, it was wildly nicer. It was bigger. It was nicer. Here's one of the main concourses right here. This was something to see, man. It was crazy.
I like it. All you have to do, really add a lot of value to architecture is just increase the size and the height of the ceilings by leaps and bounds, and that increases the wow factor of building by tenfold.
Yeah, I mean, it was so freaking crazy. I mean, this building was impressive. It was operated by the Pennsylvania Railroad for quite a good while, but once passenger services started to die off around the 50s and 60s, because the U.S. government started to subsidize the airlines a lot more than they were the railroads, and so railroad fares were becoming uncompetitive, and not only that, the quality of the passenger trains was also starting to decline heavily as well, along with the ridership, because airplanes were cheaper, they were faster, and not only that, they were cleaner, which were all things the railroads were no longer able to upkeep because of the lack of subsidies. The station started to fall into disrepair, much like many others, and they ended up demolishing the thing. And so let me see if I can find y'all a picture of its demolition. Because here was the outside in 1962. This was just, I think, a year before they started to demolish it. Let me see here. Happy dip. They don't have any pictures of the demolition, but it was getting pretty rough. You see inside of there, they were already demolishing it and tearing it down piece by piece. And then later on, after that, they then made Madison Square Garden, which is where Penn Station is now. So I'll show you what the modern Penn Station looks like as a comparison. So let me see. Here we go. This would be, yep, here we go. You can see there's Madison Square Garden. So this giant Madison Square Garden venue, it sits right on top of the plot where the Penn Central Station used to be. So now I'll drop y'all down here inside the station, and this is what it looks like now. So let me see if I can get y'all down into the basement. So this is what it looks like largely.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick though, Enforcer, I was going to ask you this though, see if you know this little answer right here. What is the largest train station in Europe? Do you know that right offhand?
Let's see here. Are you talking about like an internal volume, like square footage?
Just like the largest one. I guess you could say yeah, internal volume.
Well, I wouldn't know for
In
certain.
Germany.
It's in Germany.
Yeah, it's in Germany.
It's going to be in the Ruhr Valley, isn't it?
Maybe.
I would have to say it's most likely in Cologne.
Nope, Leipzig.
Leipzig?
Yeah.
The hell's Leipzig? Over in East Germany?
Yeah, it's the Leipzig Hauptbahnhof.
Oh, shit, no way. Like, dude, I saw it from space. I was like, oh my god. I was like, this is huge.
It's massive. The largest one. I think it's like 900,000 square feet or something like that. It's not exactly beautiful or anything, but it's just massive.
Dang. It's not really that beautiful. East Germany probably did it to them. It's big. I wouldn't say it's impressive though, but it is big. I'll give it that. I would say, in my opinion, the OG. How in the hell did we even get on this whole rabbit hole? The OG of railway stations in Europe, in my mind, and it's because I actually went to this one, is London Paddington. So let me see if I can. Okay, so here's Hyde Park. So then it's over here. So here we go. It's London Paddington. I think this is, in my opinion, my favorite train station because the inside concourse is gorgeous as well as the platforms. It's a beautiful place. Probably one of the most impressive ones in Europe, in my opinion. I didn't really get to go into a lot of the other major ones in London, but I think it's beautiful, me personally. But if I had to go for one in America, it's actually a close call in between a few. Chicago's a really good one. Washington Union Station is also a really pretty building as well. They're actually going to be renovating that one here in the future. They're going to be tearing down everything that exists behind the main station and building this brand new concourse and platform layout that's going to be really, really nice. So I can't wait for that. That's going to be really neat. But the main station itself, the one built in 1908, that you just can't beat. That was one of the most impressive there was, at least in my opinion, architecturally. But then there's another one that's actually really cool to me too, which is actually all the way over here in Los Angeles, which is Los Angeles Union Station, which is right up here. And so this is it. Let me go show you all this. This is what the interior looks like. It's based a lot off of Spanish and Native American design. Honestly, some people, because this is what it reminds me of a little bit, some people are going to be reminded of The Shining a little bit, but I honestly think the building that they used in The Shining was actually pretty nice looking. I forgot the name of it, but I thought it was pretty neat looking inside architecturally, and I think this one's really, really cool. The neat blend of American, Spanish, and Native American architectural design, or at least style, went into this building. I think it's very unique and really is very representative of the kind of historical background the state of California has.
This is in Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, yeah. This is the Union Station there. So this is the main, the main hall. The concourses are further outside.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Like, what part of Los Angeles?
It is pretty close to Skid Row, man. It's like right, like 18 blocks away because Skid Row is right down here.
Interesting. It looks pretty neat. Also, Miss Disa said Union Station is very nice. I'll take their word for it. I'll take their word for it. But I'll be curious to see that.
Yeah, I will be very curious to see it. But there are a lot of cool ones around America. There's a lot of cool ones around the world. But one thing I will say is that architecture and trying to invoke the culture of the area and also an elegance and beauty in architectural design is so important. Like, you just can't emphasize it enough, and it really is important for people to feel like they have an identity to the place they belong because it's unique and it's special and it's theirs. There's no other place that looks like it. And not only that, it makes people really happy and really proud to see stuff like that. You have a lot of respect for something that looks like that because it's just so pretty. There was so much time and effort and style that was put into it. You just can't top it, at least to me. But it's still, in my opinion, while Chicago and Los Angeles are really, really cool looking, I still would pick Washington, D.C.'s Union Station as the #1 prettiest looking train station in the United States, in my personal opinion. But anyways, with that, I think that was a rabbit hole of the century right there. One of the longest ones ever, just about the buildings that are used for train stations. But anyways, still, thank you so much once again for the support, Papa Kenny's Workshop. Gave a little bit of a shout out to Rhode Island through its train stations and talking about all of them. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to go down historic length rabbit holes. And so with that, we are on to the next ones.
All right, and our next one here goes to Andy L, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Andy L, for the second support of the night. We appreciate that very much. He said, good night, gentlemen. Great info as usual, and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Andy L. And thank you for saying it was a great night. I hope it was. And thank you for saying that the news was good. And of course, thank you for being around for a long time, Andy L. Thank you for your second super chat of the night. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And this one goes to Steve Smith, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support as well. He said, I'm a long-time lurker and a huge fanboy. He said, as a former U.S. SOF, he said, I feel like these broadcasts take me back to Intel briefings, but shows the hard work that y'all put into to digging up this information. And have a great vacation.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Steve Smith. And what a high praise right there. Back in the Intel briefings. I actually have a friend of mine who is currently in the Space Force, and I remember at some point he was like, man, honestly, what you do is a lot like briefings we get. But you do them a lot better. Like, not to say that, like, it's the best, the greatest, people have been saying, but he said I did it a lot better because the one or two briefings he's been on, the person who was running the briefing or kind of, doing the briefing, stuttered a lot, he said. And so it made it really hard to follow. I'm kind of blessed that we don't stutter a lot. Sometimes we do. Well, sometimes I do specifically. I have a stammer. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Steve Smith. Incredibly kind words, and we will make sure to have a great vacation. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we oh wait a minute, hang on, Matthew. We have to follow through this. Michael McMahon had a specific request. He said the ugliest train station is in Atlanta. Atlanta Union Station. So let me pull up Atlanta.
Oh, we've been to that one.
We have, and that's why I know he's right. Like, that's why I'm like, he's right, Oh, no. This is what they call Union Station now, and it's actually Atlanta Peachtree. This is where the Amtrak service runs through. Let me see if there's another one. They should have had one close to town. As many of y'all know, a lot of the towns ended up having their older infrastructure ripped out. Like, something that a lot of Americans don't know is that back in the day, bus services were actually unique. They were not the norm. Electric trolleys or tram services were the norm in pretty much every single American city. Some of the major oil companies like Exxon and Shell actually ended up coming in and lobbying local towns to rip up their tramways and to instead replace them with bus services instead. A lot of people don't know that. But another interesting thing is that in Atlanta Peachtree, this thing is god ugly. So this is the building that they run the Amtrak service out of. Not that bad, right? Not that bad. I mean, it's not a rough looking station. It's small.
It sucks.
But, oh my god. It's literally near an interstate. And not only that, it only has one platform. And also the platform's like in massive disrepair. It's terrible. Like, this is... I would agree it is by far, in my opinion, the worst train station in America. Like, I don't think there's any way that you can get around that or disagree with that. It's just a bad one. And I don't like it. Like, I think if there was a better train station out there, there has to be, because it sure as hell can't be this one. Oh, look, it's the Crescent.
We went on this thing 10 years ago, and I remember it was not a good experience. I didn't care for the train ride either, to be honest. Like, it kind of sucked. And also, getting out on that platform stuff here at the station was not good either. Like, I'll honest with you. That, ruined me on Amtrak, going on that one, trip. We went from Birmingham to Atlanta and back. And that ruined me on Amtrak because it was nasty and it wasn't that nice.
But, man, I'll tell you, let's see here. What is this? Let's see. So that would be I think that's one of the silver services, like the Silver Star or the Silver Crescent or something like that. Because this one right here, let's see, where was it? Where in the world was the picture of it? I think it was further up here. This is the Crescent because it has its Amfleet long distance coaches, and then it has its Viewliners back here, and also its cafe car. So that is a crescent 100% that's on this picture. I don't know what the hell the other one was because it was going like a completely different way. But yeah, this is a bad one. I wouldn't recommend this train station to anyone. Atlanta is also a city that some say you would want to see out the train window. You don't want to stop, you just want to keep going. Like, you know, I don't know. Like, I've been to Atlanta. I've had good experiences in Atlanta. I've also had horrific experiences in Atlanta. I've probably seen more dead bodies in Atlanta than I have anywhere else. Not from being shot or anything like car crashes and stuff, but still, you know, it's kind of a mess city. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Another big rabbit hole, but thank you, Michael McMahon, for bringing that up. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to William P., who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, William, for two supports, that is. The first one here says, do you think that the Kaliningrad Pocket or the Suwalki Gap will come into play anytime soon with the Belarus-Poland-France dynamic, or if World War III kicks off?
I would say, in my opinion, the Suwalki Gap would probably be important if World War III kicked off, but if Poland or France independently got involved inside of Ukraine, the Suwalki Gap probably wouldn't play that big of a deal because it wouldn't be a full-on world war by that point. Also, to close off the Suwalki Gap, you would have to conduct offensive actions against Lithuania, which would create a third world war. So the Suwalki Gap would not come into play until a third world war had started. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one that you threw in.
And the second one from William says, are you guys familiar with the Chicagoland oases that go over the toll roads and the McDonald's that was in the middle of the Skyway?
I do not know about that, William P. Chicago's, let's see here. Let me try and look for them, maybe. Chicago's oases that go over the toll roads. No, I don't know about that at all. Can we find Jamie? Pull it up. Chicago's oasis. So Chicago Oasis. What is this? So it's something on the interstate on 294. Where's 294? There's 290. So here's 294. So it's something on one of these interstates. Wow, that's a giant rail yard. Where in the world would it be? Because this is actually a state toll interstate, apparently, or something along those lines. It's somewhere. Let's see. Chicago, Southland, Lincoln. Well, I'm just going to type it in. Chicago. Here we go. So this is it. Right here. So where is this? Dang, this is way down there. This is practically in Ohio. Actually, Indiana, sorry.
It's down there getting close to Gary.
Dude, Gary, wait a minute. Is it really? Oh! Yeah, you got to have an oasis near here because you ain't going to be getting any reprieve beyond it. But let's see.
Gary, come home.
Dude, wow, look at this. You got a nice old car in here. Was this owned by a mobster like Al Capone? But let's see. Oh, they got caution tape on the playground.
And upside down tables.
That is a nice car, though.
Man, that car right there looks like that's a muscle car.
Man, that looks like a Duesenberg or something like that. Like you get greased.
A Heisenberg.
Yeah, something like I'm the one who knocks. But yeah, not a bad place. Like, they got food. They got Panda Express in here. That's pretty okay. This is pretty neat. So how in the world does it work? So you pull... Dude, it's a road chef. It's an American version of a road chef, Matthew.
Now, that's cool. I wish we had more of those across the country. I love those road chefs over there in England and stuff where you can pull off the side of the road and it's like a get out and walk in type thing, like a little mini mall. Yes, it's a mini mall, but it's like a gas station, and they have those beef turnover things in there, which are really good.
Man, it was sick. Well, let's see, those were pasties and also what was the other one? Sausage rolls is what they were. They were very good. Good British food, in my personal opinion. Simple but good. But still, thank you so much for the support and sharing this with us because these are incredibly cool. There's a lot of them in Britain, actually, and I wish there were more of them here in America like this one. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one's going to go to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Live Laugh's Toaster, for the support. They said, good evening, enforcers, and good evening to you. They said, please take one from the chat in LSA, and we shall get one from the chat, and once again, huge thanks for that support. And this one is going to go to Miss Disa. Look at that. They said Ukrainian F-16s received from the USA the latest version of the anti-aircraft missile system of the Russian Federation, which even NATO allies do not have. And do we have any details?
Sadly, we don't. I hate to say that. I heard that today, but we had so little detail, I didn't even report on it for that reason. So I hate to say that, Miss Disa. I'd have to declare ignorance on that at the moment, but it's a great question, and hopefully we can find some more information on that as time goes by. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I saw Elka Sir say in the live chat, well, what about Buc-ee's? Buc-ee's just doesn't hit the same way a Road Chef does in England. The Road Chef was like, it was very serious and very practical. And it wasn't like, no offense to Buc-ee's, like I'm not trying to knock on Buc-ee's, but Buc-ee's is kind of like a little bit of like an amusement, like a attraction type deal. And it's really not like a 100% practical, like serious type thing that you'd show up to every day, like let's say like a good analogy is like a coffee shop. It's like the Disney of the roads. I don't really want all that attraction and all that stuff. I just want like a dedicated like Road Chef thing where it's like walk in, it's very interesting, there's good food and stuff like that, and there's a gas station nearby, and you can simply stop, take a break, and then leave again. And it's like, it's serious. It's not like too playful and stuff like that. Buc-ee's just doesn't cut it for me. I don't honestly. I like Buc-ee's for the attraction aspect of it, but I don't like it for a gas station. It's too crowded. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Buc-ee's is all right. I like, it's pretty good for what it is. They have really clean bathrooms, but I don't know. Like Matthew said, it doesn't really feel utilitarian. It feels like you have to be in like a Buc-ee's mood to go to Buc-ee's. Like it's just not something that you can get business done in. Like I'm hungry and I want to eat, and then you have like a whole bunch of restaurant options or anything. It's more like I'm like a Buc-ee's fan. I want to go to Buc-ee's. Kind of like how people are like Disney fans and they want to go to Disney. You know what I mean? Like it's just. It doesn't have the same kind of emotional like side connected to it that Road Chefs have. So
they overdid the beaver. Like they overdid it, the beaver, I think. Like nothing wrong with the mascot. Like I know some people are gonna be like, oh, don't bash the beaver on Buc-ee's and stuff like that. It's just, I think it's overdone. Like it's like, I don't even think Disney goes through branding quite to that extreme with like the mouse. Buc-ee's just went crazy with like putting that beaver logo on literally anything and everything they could find. It's just not my thing. I wish it was more like just like stable and normal for like a gas station. If it was like that, it would probably be better. It probably wouldn't be as successful as it is right now because it's got that attraction aspect. But I don't know. I want the Road Chef over here.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I want that McDonald's thing that y'all got in the UK that like has the hash brown, the ketchup, and all that stuff in one wrap. We need that in the US as well. I forgot all about that thing. Breakfast thing. I want that. That was so good.
That was really good. But also, one thing that is not good right now is the time, because we are going to start running overtime here. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
So this one goes to Lachlan Mason, who puts in a 15, and thank you very much, Lachlan. He said, I love the channel. I only recently founded it, but I love how clearly you show the facts without showing the bias. And do you think that Putin would do a nuke test to scare tactics? And love from Australia.
And thank you for being one of our Australian viewers, Lachlan Mason. And thank you for saying that you really enjoyed the channel. It means a lot to us. And also, I would say yes, Putin would do something like that as an intimidation tactic, because usually nuclear tests are a form of low-level coercion. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Duncan VR, the channel legend, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And of course, we have the animal noises and the super chat. So if you're new, I'm reading the super chat. I'm not going nuts. Duncan said, Babuba, Baba. When you are press meow quack, you can use SEAL Team 69 to take care of any bad sheep.
Nice.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, oh, man. The fly wants to talk to the marmot. Let's bring out Alan. Quack.
Let's see here. I'm trying to grab that still. I was hoping that you'd be doing that all the way up until this point.
Hello there. It's Alan. Hello there, good sir. Good. Zoom in on the marmot face. Look at him. Yeah, hello there, Governor. Welcome back in the question segment. You know, we hadn't got a hit piece in a good minute. Where's he at? In the gutter. Bastard.
Oh man, one day I'm gonna freaking destroy him. I'm gonna steal one subscriber. I'm gonna effing farm their subscribers. Oh,
Not lying, was ya? Get real. Come on, man. Don't get chewed up and spit out by these large chompers.
I'm such a respectable human being. Hot Dog Man then went to a convention in Chicago, Illinois, where he was flipped off, cussed at, and treated like shit by everyone he ran in contact with. He exudes a kind of personality that people just do not like. Period.
The story ended in tragedy, Governor. He went to the DNC. He went outside the door, and they said, "You bastard! Get away from my door!" And he said, "Let me in." I said, "Let me in. I'm the hot dog man. I have creds." And they said, "I don't care about your creds. Go piss off. Piss off." And they flipped him off, and that was the end of the story.
Man, oh my lord. What a clown, dude. He like it's like I don't like this is how stupid the guy is. It's like you have to usually have like a prior agreement as press to be able to get into a major political convention, like whether it was the RNC or the DNC. It's like, don't you know that? It's not like you can just show up like it's a Holiday Inn and ask for a booking that moment. It's like you got to kind of have that in advance. And they're also not going to let some weird guy who gives off very odd vibes go in there, because it's like, what will he do? He could do anything. I mean, he's got the whole Dr. Disrespect mustache and everything. You know, it's like that's not a good look.
Do you think he walked up and said, I'm a real big YouTuber. You should let me in. You should know who I am. I guarantee he walked up and said that. Like, I guarantee you 100%. That's probably when they were like, someone probably looked it up in the background while he was yakking, and they were like, hell no, like this guy's not getting in. He's getting like 500 viewers or something like that. He is not coming in.
Now they saw all of those posts where, you know what, if you don't like me, go F yourself or something like that. And they're like, yeah, he's emotionally unstable. He cannot come in. Like, or something like that. They're like, he's got to
go. Or they pull up the video that with the thumbnail said, I am the hot dog man. They're like, oh God, like, he's not coming in.
Oh man. Dude, man, that was a sad day right there, man, to sit there and make a video admitting that you're the hot dog man. And that did him no favors either anyways. But with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, let's see, Matthew in the live chat said, next time I go to England, I'm taking you with me to translate. I'll tell you what. My English accent's gotten better for some reason. I don't know why. I just listened to more English people speaking, and for some reason I've picked it up a little bit, maybe. But anyways, moving on to our next one here, we have a $10 super chat from Frostbright Productions. And thank you very much, Frostbright, for that support and always being a viewer on the channel as well. And he said, hey guys, so the Bulgarian military posted that Russia moved their electronic missile launchers near the Baltics, ? And can you provide more information on this and explain the logistical reasoning and LLT LSA?
I wish I could, Frostbright Productions, but I have no information about that at the moment to be able to explain much about it. And also, I don't know a lot about those particular launchers, sadly. So I'd largely have to declare ignorance on that. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Professor Thursday, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support as well. He said phones are very expensive in Belarus because of sanctions, and they can only afford to sell cheaper, lower quality phones. Plus, there is an internet slowdown in many areas, so the quality loads up bad.
Interesting. And I thank you for the support, Professor Thursday, and that may explain why the photos were dog quality. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and thank you for sharing a little tidbit of info with us about Belarusian phone tech. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Oliver Queen, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that support, by the way, as well. They said, I'm just starting to watch the stream, and I have something to say about that B. So in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, alphabet B sound like V in yours. And B can stand as Belarus or Wagner, or both of them.
And thank you for the support, Oliver Queen. I actually didn't connect that because I do know how to speak a very limited amount, or how to at least pronounce letters in Cyrillic alphabet. I didn't even think for a minute that actually does sound a bit like a V. So thank you for sharing that and reminding me of that, because that is a good point. Maybe it's supposed to be like a Belarus and Wagner thing, sort of. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tony Rossi. And thank you very much, Mr. Rossi, for that $10 support. We appreciate that very much. There's no comment to address, but thank you very much, Tony, for that support. We also have a 10 from Aussie Dave. And thank you, Aussie. They said, thank you for providing a great channel. And do you know if the new Australian anti-drone system Slinger has arrived in Ukraine just yet?
Thank you so much for the support, Aussie Dave. And also, thank you for the kind words as well. Let's see. The new Australian anti-drone system, we've heard that they were sending it, but we've never heard about its arrival. But usually that takes a while for us to ever hear about, because from what we know, the Skynex system has been in Ukraine for a good minute, and we didn't know about it until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to HerpDerpNV, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, HerpDerp, for that support. They said, it seems that voice impression Matt does so well could use a nickname like the other impressions have, and I've heard that individual being referred to as the Bear Undertaker recently, and it seems to be fitting. You can call him the Bear Undertaker if you want. I call him the Worm Man. I call him the Worm Man, but you can call him the Bear Undertaker too. You can call him the fellow with endless weird and wild stories I've never heard of before. I've never heard wild stories quite like that. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And you know what? I have to agree with Matthew. That's what we usually call the guy. The Worms! The Worms! But so thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, that's a good one though, Herb Derp. I like that one. But we're gonna keep to the Worms because I think it's more appropriate. Because he does as the worm guides. I mean, look, he's not even in control of his action, folks. I mean, the worm tells him what to do, and he just follows what the worm says. It's simple as that. But still, thank you so much once again. We are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to S. Langston, who puts in a 10 and says, you were talking about big buildings earlier. GM Fairfax is 4.9 million square feet.
Dang. GM Fairfax. Oh my goodness. Where is this? Kansas City.
Kansas City.
How come we never saw this when we drove through, Matthew? Like, I never saw this once.
We weren't on that north side of town. We were on the south.
Well, I be dip. I've never seen a building that big in my life. Look at that. Crazy. Crazy. What is in there?
I bet that's a fun place to work.
Oh, boy. It sure
Home
looks
of the
fun.
Malibu. Did I see that correctly on the front of the building?
Oh,
God, the Malibu. This is where they make the thing?
This thing?
Ah.
Oh God!
Oh my God!
What the hell is this?
Oh God!
Oh God!
That's the American worker.
The American lacquer. Why in the hell are people photoshopping themselves up here in front of this thing? Like, let's see. What is the wordage? Drivers must remain in this area once keys are surrendered. Are they processing prisoners of war? Truckers of war? Like
at corporate speak, treating everybody like cogs and stuff like that.
Oh, and they're on strike.
On strike.
This is like a whole like saga of stories out here. And then we got this man. He's shown up in 2 pictures. I have to mention him now. He's like a leprechaun or something. I don't know. Like, but this is something. This place. Look, there's another person photoshopped in. What is going on? Anyways, this is an interesting building. I will give it that. But the fact that there's so many people photoshopped in front of it and they got like a whole like saga of stuff going on out here, that is interesting in its own right out here on Goose Island. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Big thanks to you once again for the support. Pointing out such a big building. And also, I believe one of the Union Pacific yards is down here. No, actually, this is BNSF? What? I thought it was Union Pacific. What do you know? This is one of their biggest, like, I think it's a, I forgot what it is. It's not a sorting yard. It's another kind of a yard that they have, but it's one of the biggest ones out here in this area. But anyways.
A holding tank.
I think that is something along what it is. It's like a holding yard or a transfer yard or something like that. But yeah, I mean, geez, I mean, there's a lot of rail yards out here. A lot of them. Is this a Union Pacific yard here? No, probably not. Wait, we can maybe see the locomotives down here. Shoot, these are in bad shape, every single one of them, and I cannot tell. So, yeah, anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And this one goes to Dunkel X, who puts in a 5 and says, Slav Ukraine, long live the LSA, and kindly take a question from the chat.
And we will, Dunkel. And of course, long live the LSA and Slava Ukrainian. What do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Susan Lowell, who says, will the Pripyat marshes not impede the advance of a Belarus army if they invaded?
The Pripyat, it didn't really stop the Russians at all. So I think the Belarusians probably wouldn't be stopped by it that much either. In fact, the Russians started digging in the stuff, and then they went, my lungs feel spicy. And it's like, well, I wonder why. But anyways, still.
It burns, bliat. It burns the lining of the lung, bliat. It hits the alveoles, bliat.
It burns! It burns! But anyways, I hope that doesn't address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5. While something goes and bangs above my head. I don't know what that was. But CK Bold put in a 5 and said, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold. Well, I tried to listen out for what that noise was a second ago. Let's see. I'll just find out what that was in a minute. Loud bang going on here. But let's see here. This one goes to a Naughty Mouse. Loud bang, loud bang. This one goes to a Naughty Mouse. He says, do you think that Ukraine is able to send sabotage troops into Belarus to cause chaos like they're in Russia?
Oh, they could. I mean, like, they could do the same thing with the sabotage groups in Belarus. Nothing would stop them. As long as they're able to get them across the border, nothing would stop them. And so with that, thank you once again for sponsoring a live chat, CK Bold, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hoodoo Texas, who puts in a 5 and says, per CNN, Belarusian military could soon join war in Ukraine, U.S. and NATO officials say. And that was in March 22nd, 2022.
And that's true. The mainstream news always says stuff they really say with no knowledge of what they're talking about. But at the same time, this time, it actually looks like they're doing something that would further that idea a great deal. So, while the mainstream news says stuff till the cows come home, it looks like it may actually be happening around this time. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, thank you, Melanie, for pointing that out. That is the Argentine yard, and I was right. That was like the biggest one BNSF had. Not Union Pacific, but it was the biggest one that BNSF had. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Siri, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much for that support as well. They said, spend the past days in Lublin, Poland. Look, surreal stories from locals and refugees from Ukraine, and amazed by the efforts of the people in that region.
Lublin, Poland. And let's take a look at this place. Oh, it's very pretty. Look at this.
That is nice. I like those buildings. They're very, very nice.
Man, it's not man shit. Like, I wish we could go here. That would be cool. But that is really cool to hear that you were here and checking this place out, because it looks like it has a very interesting history to it. Is that the town sign? Well, if it was, it sure as hell isn't now. But I still have to thank you so much for the support, and I would have wished that I could come out here and take a look at this, but sadly, our vacation wouldn't allow for it, because we just don't have enough time to go all the way to Europe. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2, and says, LSA hit the like button. That's an order.
And thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment. Everyone hit that like button. That is an order. We've gotten up to 4,050 likes so far. How many more likes can we get? Probably a decent amount, actually, but we'll see. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, LSA Sergeant Figment. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, before we do, Matthew, the Bailey Yard, we have to find the Bailey Yard. The Bailey Yard in Nebraska. This is the largest rail yard in the world. Here we go. This is the one I was thinking about a while ago. This one. Look at that, dude. That is insane.
This is Union Pacifico?
Yes, Union Pacifico. And look at all them coal hoppers. I be dang, man. Coal literally till the end of days.
Ah, coal country.
Oh, man. It's like one of the main things that makes the railroads money these days is coal. It's like, I think 30% or 35% of all rail cars in this country right now that are on the move are filled with coal.
Well, that's good for them, because they're making big bucks. The freight railroads are making tremendous money. The stock's doing great.
Man, there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said about this, but still, this is incredibly cool, because look at the size of that rail yard. It's almost the size of North Platte itself. which is pretty crazy. It is the biggest one in the world, though. Pretty impressive stuff. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way, Bullseye Bob. Thank you for being a railroader. And with that, we are on to the last super chat of the night.
And the last one of the night, excuse me, is going to go to Marc-Andre Burnett, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support. No comment to address, but we appreciate the support and helping to keep them lights on. Thanks to Marc-Andre Burnett. And we're moving now on to our live chat questions and the Morse Code decoders of the stream. Tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, and her royal fluffiness, who said that the Morse code for today reads, Russia is trying anything they can to try to stop Ukraine, but it's tough for them, and LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money, and y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all for getting that down on the nail. That's pretty impressive on the 916th day of all days. And so with that, big thanks to y'all once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night. And before we get on to that, Matthew said, clean burning coal, baby. Actually, y'all be interested to know. Matthew, did you know that there's actually dirty burning coal and clean burning coal? There's actually a difference?
I did know that, actually. There's dirty coal and clean coal.
So you know about anthracite coal, then?
I don't know the specific name for it, but I know it burns dirty.
Man, anthracite coal is the cleanest burning coal there is. It burns so clean, there's no smoke, crazily enough, but it burns a little bit slower.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. But anyways, with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mark Renner, who said, can the Polish army come along the Belarus border in Ukraine to help protect the border?
They could. They 100% could. It just requires the Polish military to give them the go-ahead and the United States to not push back against that at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And great question once again. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to David Tablet, who says, what can the U.S. really do if Poland decides to start shooting down drones over its own territory?
Reread that one again?
They said, what can the U.S. really do if Poland decides to start shooting down drones over its own territory?
Well, we can threaten them with some possible retaliation, especially if it's against their wishes. We could stop selling them military equipment, like ammunition and spare parts and new aircraft, new tanks, stuff like that. And that really plays a big role in Poland right now because they don't really have many other places to get a lot of the equipment they're looking for. And so... with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Melanie's 16040, Matthew, it must be a railroader because they know all about that coal. Because I forgot what it's named, but it's like bituminous coal or something like that. It's one of the dirty something. Let me go see like how to pronounce.
Oh man, that's what I call a hot dog man, bituminous.
Bituminous.
Bituminous coal.
Bituminous.
Yeah, bituminous. Bituminous coal is the one that is dirtier burning, and it's not as high quality. And then there's some other kind of coal that comes out of Germany, specifically out of these pits. I forgot the name of it, but it is the dirtiest burning coal in the world. It's the lowest quality stuff. But that's what the Germans use in their power system. And America uses mostly bituminous coal nowadays because anthracite coal, which comes from in the Appalachian Mountains, while it burns so cleanly, like it's actually really, really cleanly burning compared to any other kind of coal. Like coal will emit like emissions, stuff like that, but anthracite coal is the best coal. The problem with it is that it's slow burning, and so for that reason it's not preferred because it doesn't burn quick enough and hot enough to be able to produce the same kind of results that bituminous coal could in a smaller boiler or a smaller boiling vessel. But back in the day, though, in this area of America, all of the steam locomotives that were being built were built with larger boilers because anthracite coal was wildly abundant. It was from the area. But at the same time, because of that, they had to build the boilers larger because the coal burns slower. And so you had to have more coal in the firebox to be able to boil the same amount of water. So the boilers had to be larger by the demands of the local area. So kind of cool. But anyways, with that, we are on to, I think, the second to last question of the night.
This is the last question of the night, actually. So, Enforcer, do the thing.
And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And for the last question of the night, we have the long-lasting question from Plant Lord. They said, is it also possible that Belarus launch attack and the troops rebel and join Ukraine? What do you think?
If it's possible that they could rebel, low chance that they would turn to the Ukrainian side, very high chance if they rebelled, they would turn on the Belarusian government and attempt to overthrow it. That would be my honest opinion at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank everyone so much once again for watching. The stream has been about 3 hours and 43 minutes long. Pretty impressive, you know, when you think about it. And I got to thank everyone for watching. 93,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. And not only that, there were about 13,000 people here. It was only 20 people short at the peak of the stream. I got to thank everyone so much once again for watching. Thank you for everyone hitting the like button. Thank you for everyone being here tonight. It means a lot to us. And we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream once again tonight, and we'll see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also maybe midday as well if there's enough news to cover tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.